Why not? Quinn thought. Charm is no longer being suppressed. Quinn started to approach the disguised woman. For some reason, when she looked at him, she couldn't help but start to imagine ripping the clothes off of his body. What the hell is going on? Was he always this tasty? She thought.
Yikes.
But her will was strong, and she wasn't going to say that in front of him.
We'll ignore that.
I think it's great. We need someone. Let's go together, Quinn said. Quinn had spoken in a normal voice, but in the woman's mind, it had come out quite soft, hushed, and gentle. Together, she replied. Quinn, turn it off, Fex suddenly said. Huh? Suddenly, Quinn could feel Fex holding his arm. When he looked up, his face was red. It's too much, man. Turn it off. Immediately seeing Fex the way he was, Quinn turned it off there and then. Your charm is being suppressed.
Bad.
Man, I almost forgot you were able to face a leader. I should have guessed you had quite strong charm skills, Fex said, now his face no longer red. Fex didn't like this. Being influenced by Quinn's charm was a sign that his mind was weak. If he had a stronger mind, he would have been able to resist the influence of skill from the leaders. Perhaps the whole vampire incident could have been avoided. Linda no longer had that feeling, and when she looked at Quinn, all she saw was a handsome young man without the urges she had previously felt. Good, let's get a move on, she said. Just to be safe, Quinn used his inspection skills to find out who it was that was joining them. The woman was Linda. She was wearing a different armor set, this one being a mixture of advanced and king-tier level equipment. He was wondering why she had decided to infiltrate her groups, and as for her tag, she was using one that was a grade D. He guessed being the co-founder of the faction had its advantages. There would be people willing to give her a tag she could borrow, and no one would refuse her. Maybe this isn't a bad thing, Quinn thought. There were a few possibilities as to why she was here. The most likely reason was that she had found out something about Quinn's shadow and wanted to see it for herself, but he thought he could use this to his advantage. Linda was strong. In reality, she was a rank B going out on a rank D quest. There was no chance any harm would come to her, so they would be able to fight off beasts without having to worry. Quinn had selected a quest, and they were off. While defeating beasts, Linda would constantly put herself in danger, trying to get Quinn or one of the others to save her. But under Quinn's orders, they chose to leave her, and each time she would get hurt, but minimally due to her strong armor. The beasts were slaughtered, and this went on for days. Linda continued to hunt with the team, and was wondering if this was how they treated all their teammates. If that was the case, it was no wonder Freddy had died. However, the way she was acting, Quinn was sure of it now. Linda was trying to get him to use his ability. Because this was what she wanted, Quinn did everything he could to not show it. Instead, he performed the flash step, using his gauntlets and hammer strike to defeat the beasts. She had seen them fight a number of intermediate beasts over the course of a few days, and she had to admit that each of them was powerful and skilled. Blip was right. Even if this group was suspicious, they had high potential.
Power.
It didn't take long until they were all upgraded to the Traveler rank of C, including Paul. When Fex had reached a C rank before everyone else, they decided not to put his tag into the machine when assigning points to speed up his process. That way, the extra points went to the others, speeding their ranking up. Linda was at a loss. She couldn't find anything about the group, and they weren't doing anything suspicious. She decided that she would go on one more hunt with them before giving up. That day, something was different. There was an announcement to be made when everyone was called into the assembly hall in the morning. Blip stood in front of everyone and had a grin on his face. We have good news for everyone. There will soon be a posting of 2 large group quests. One of them is for the lower-ranking members. 2 king-tier beasts have been discovered. As for the others, an emperor-tier beast has been found, Blip said. Quinn smiled at the thought. He wasn't going to let anyone else get those king-tier beasts. Episode 567, A Leader is Needed. There was excitement in the air for the whole shelter after the special announcement was made. It turned out that incidents like this didn't happen much. Killing beasts like this would provide them with top-tier equipment and significantly boost the strength of the entire faction. The 2 quests hadn't been put up yet on the quest board, because this would be a group quest rather than an individual team quest. A group quest was where multiple teams would work together to take care of the beast. According to Sam, there were a few different rules for this. Everyone who went on the quest, if successful, would be awarded some type of compensation, mostly credits. The member that killed the beast, delivering the last blow, would be given the beast crystal as a reward. It was then up to them to decide who would receive the said crystal. At times, due to how tough a beast would be to kill, multiple people would attack one at a time. If this was the case, then the leader, who was present, would decide which group he felt contributed the most. This was one of the reasons why it was taking a while. Blip and the faction's leaders were debating the quest's level as well as who would lead it. While waiting, Sam this time came over to Quinn and the others to join them. Since he was only a rank C like them, he was not invited to these types of meetings like the others. "Hey, you don't have to hang out with us because you feel bad, bro," Fex said with a smile. "You can join other groups. You know they hate us." The group sat down at their table, as did many of the others as well. Sam looked around before taking a seat. "Actually, I'm not the most popular around here," Sam replied. "What do you mean?" Quinn was interested. He had seen the people outside treat Sam quite well. If he was referring to him not being popular, then he meant inside the shelter. "You see, I have quite a low-level ability," Sam said. "I was never able to train my wind ability above level 5, but I now have advanced gear all over me, and my cape is now at the king tier level as well. The others think the only reason I am where I am is because of Nate. They think I piggybacked off him and ranked up." Looking at his face, Quinn could see this perhaps troubled Sam a lot. But it wasn't because of the way people were treating him. No. Quinn had seen this look before. It was Sam who believed the words of the others. Sam felt like he was weak, just like Quinn had once done as well. "In a way, it's true," said Sam. "When we defeated a king-tier beast by chance, Nate chose to give the crystal to me. The only reason why I'm allowed to hang around the B ranks and Blip is because of Nate's position, so the others don't exactly like me around here." "Hey, join the club," Fex said. "Don't worry about that too much, man. We're finally rank Cs as well, which means we can go together." This is why Sam was a bit happy. He'd always been with Nate, and perhaps this would be the first time he could do something independently, a group that wouldn't judge him for his past achievements. Over in the assembly hall, the upper leaders of the Crows were having a discussion. There was Blip, the only A rank in the base, and the founder, Linda. Blip's sister and co-founder, a rank B. Then there were 3 more rank Bs, including Nate, who hadn't been there long. Then there was another rank B female warrior who went by the name Megan. She had light brown hair that was long and curly. It was hard for her to keep it maintained, so it looked as if she had just given up. On her back were 2 small axes. Then there was Mitchell. He also had dirty blonde curly hair, and on his face square-like glasses, with his arms crossed, listening intently. "Now that we have decided on the Emperor tier group, I have some plans I want for the ones going for the King tiers," Blip said. "Linda, I would like you to secretly go along with the lower ranks on this quest. Protect whoever you must, but I want you to do it secretly." "I'm okay with that," Linda replied. "But does this mean you want someone else to be the leader of this?" "Yes, that's the idea. We need more people to rank up, more people to be on the same level as us. At the same time, I don't want to invite just anyone into the upper part of the Crows. We need to see leadership skills. 4 of us will be going after the Emperor tier alone. The 2 King tiers, we will only allow rank Ds and Cs to go on this one, while Linda will go with them hidden. If you can, try to stay away from the limelight as long as possible. I don't want the group to get nervous or become overly reliant on knowing you will be there." "Then who is going to lead the other expedition?" Megan asked. "It would have to be a grade C, correct?" "What about Sam?" Nate asked. "I don't think that's a good idea," Mitchell chimed in. "I know he's your friend, and I have to admit he has indeed shown impressive qualities. I would say maybe he is more suitable to be where you are right now, in terms of running the base," Mitchell said, pushing his glasses back onto the bridge of his nose. "But there is a problem that you might not know about." "Which is?" Nate said, with a little anger in his voice, annoyed that his friend was being looked down on. "The other travelers, they don't look up to him. They don't respect him. Someone cannot lead a group if they don't respect him. Every decision he makes, there will be those that don't listen to him and try to undermine him. He has a good, clear mind and can make tough decisions, but at the end of the day, he has only been with the Crows for 2 months. The others will not like the fact that he has been made leader." "How about Kong?" Megan suggested. "If we're going by who has been here the longest, he has also been a rank C for the longest time as well." "Kong, that's not a bad idea," Blip said. "Kong?" Nate said. "That guy's a little rough. Are you sure he will be good for these guys?" Nate remembered that he had gone questing only a few times with Kong. He was strong and skilled, but he was tough on those that made mistakes and didn't exactly do things his way. "Apart from your biased friend Sam, do you have a better suggestion?" Megan asked. Back in the main quest room, Blip and the others had come out to make an announcement. He had told them all that the Emperor tier beast would be dealt with by the B and A ranks, while Linda would be left behind to look after the base. The reasoning was that they didn't want anyone to die, and it was too risky to take any lower ranks. "As for the second request, teams of 5 can go. but they can only consist of rank C and rank D members. As for the one leading the quest, we have decided on Kong." A few cheers and whistles came from the room as they heard the name. When Quinn's group looked over, they could see a large, muscular, bald, dark-skinned brown man with a tribal tattoo over his face. But it didn't look like everyone was happy about the decision, as half the room had remained silent over it. "If you wish to register, then please go over to Kong, and we will start the preparations." And then the announcement was made. The 2 quests had popped up on the quest board with the requirements. While the other groups had gone to Kong to go register their teams, Quinn was still sitting down thinking. There was no rush, and it wasn't like Kong could deny their team from going. They were all rank Cs. What Quinn was thinking about was the reward instead. Because it was a new type of king-tier beast they had never discovered, it meant the crystal would have to be given over to the Grey Lash family. In return, their group would get something else. But Quinn didn't like this, and he felt like the king-tier crystal given back would be something of lower quality. From what Nate had said, sometimes they were just given king-tier weapons that had already been heavily used. On the other hand, at least their team would get points for completing the quest, but would that matter? Their team would also have to get the last kill or contribute the most to the hunt. That's when an idea popped into Quinn's head. Perhaps there is a way for him to get both the king-tier crystals for himself without having to give them over. If this plan worked, then maybe he would also have a chance to grab the Emperor tier as well. "Quinn, I'm not liking that creepy smile on your face right now. Calm it down a touch or two, will ya?" Feck said. Episode 568, Poor Leadership. Quinn saw the strange-looking ninja who had been joining the group over the past week or two as she looked around the room. Linda was the lady in question, and she looked a little different than normal. She donned standard black clothing over her armor instead of the black armor she had previously worn. This was because she was wearing the same outfit she had worn for the assessment today. A mixture of beast tier and king tier equipment. It looked like she would be coming with the C rank and D ranks for this quest. The crows were not going to take any chances. It was a smart move, and Quinn knew what they were doing. However, what he didn't know was why Linda had been in his group for so long. What was she trying to find out? Looking at her now, Quinn could also see that she had joined a group of 5 where Suze was also a part of them. It couldn't have been a coincidence. Suze was most likely sent as a spy, and she had reported back to her of his abilities. She must have joined the group at first because she was skeptical of them, especially Paul, who was from the Pure group. Perhaps they were only keeping an eye on him and them for a few days to make sure they weren't all from Pure with ulterior motives, but her curiosity had shifted when Suze reported. Linda joined the team, trying to get herself into troublesome situations to see if Quinn really did have the shadow power. This is what Quinn thought anyway. He didn't know the real reason for her first joining was to find out who the Blood Evolver was. This is going to be quite troublesome, Quinn thought. He had a plan, but it would be difficult with Linda present. Getting to the quest board, Quinn made a mental note of the 2 sites. They appeared to be in the same general vicinity, but distinct areas. Getting from one to the other shouldn't be too hard. This is good. Paul, purchase information on both of these areas, and see if you can get a map for both locations as well. One as detailed as possible. Don't worry about the cost. Note down anything strange as well, Quinn ordered. Paul nodded and headed off. He didn't ask why and had just agreed to do it. Lately, Paul had been more compliant and less snappy with Quinn. Things had changed a bit since that day. Kong was already loading and supplying equipment. The leader had a budget that they might utilize on adventures like these. He'd used it to buy maps, a tracker, and traps. These were the minimum requirements for any high-level beast hunt. While Kaz, Paul, and Fex, the trio, went to gather the extra equipment, Quinn and Sam had gone to register, and Quinn could hear Sam's heartbeat. It was beating louder than usual as they got closer and closer to the table Kong was at. "What's wrong?" Quinn asked. Heck, can you tell?" Sam thought he was doing a good job of hiding his fears, but it turns out not only he was, but Quinn could hear his heartbeat. "Remember what I was talking about? How some people don't exactly like me being here, or the rank I'm at? Well, Kong here is one of the worst offenders of them all."
I can't do that yet.
They arrived at the front desk without saying much. "Now, if it isn't little Sammy boy, you do know this is for rank C's and D's only, which means your boyfriend can't tag along with you on this quest," Kong joked, and his teammates behind all laughed as well. Quinn looked at his gear and all of the gear of the other participants. Apart from Linda, all of them wore advanced tier beast gear, which seemed to be the standard. However, Sam was the only one that had a king tier cape. It seems that rank Cs had difficulty obtaining better gear after they reached this rank. Quinn's group was still primarily in middle gear. The major reason for this was because they had only recently reached sea level and had yet to go on any quest to take down some advanced tier beasts. Kong, just register me down, please. I don't want any trouble. We all need to do this for the shelter and the faction, Sam replied. Yeah, I know. I'm just teasing you a little. I'm saying these things because I care about the faction. Remember your true rank and don't go trying to pull off things you can't do. You'll only get in the way. Nate ain't here to cover for you, Kong replied, and now he was looking towards Quinn. Sam didn't respond, and his traveler ID had been added to the system. What was the point of responding at all? Sam felt it wouldn't change his opinion of him. The only way to do that was to do so out on the field. Well, I didn't know you were teaming up with them. Didn't you all just become C ranks? Kong asked. Aren't D ranks allowed on this quest as well? Quinn replied. I thought they would have at least put a leader with half a brain in charge. Quinn had dealt with enough people who were like him during his time at school. Maybe if he still felt like hiding, he wouldn't have said anything back, but now he was fed up with people like this. Slamming his fists on the table and standing up, Kong went to grab Quinn, but it felt like his hands had just slipped through, grabbing nothing but thin air as Quinn had moved back. Oh right, a speed ability user, correct? Kong said. Perfect for running away. I guess you did the same thing when you let Freddy die, right? You just ran away. Quinn didn't like Kong saying this. He didn't like this one bit. The death of Freddy was still fresh in his mind. Hearing this, the images of his body covered in blood appeared. Then, for some reason, as the anger was boiling inside of him, the picture was switched. Instead of Freddy covered in blood, it was Kong, and standing over him was Quinn, covered in his blood. I don't care if your team dies, and that includes Sam. I don't see you guys as part of this faction anyway. We were here even before the Civil War started, and those are the people I will protect. Quinn had noticed a few things between the Crows members while staying here. From the outside, it appeared that everyone was getting along when Quinn first arrived. However, there was a gap. Those who joined the Crows before the Civil War and those who joined afterward were two different groups. The ones that joined after couldn't have been here longer than 2 months, yet some of them were high ranks, solo travelers or travelers from other factions. Due to their high ranks, Blip had treated them quite well. The other half of the Crows' rage stemmed from this desire to strengthen the Crows. They had been loyal to the Crows before all of this, yet because they weren't as skillful and such, they were treated as less important. Quinn understood both sides because of his current situation. What did it feel like to see others advance simply because they were stronger, while newcomers were treated as second-class citizens for no reason? Hey, what's going on here? Are we all good here? Vex said, pulling Quinn back a bit. Quinn, calm. If you get any angrier, your eyes are going to start shooting beams, man, Vex whispered. He didn't mean this literally. He just meant they would start to glow red. Quinn would use his influence skill without really knowing he was using it. The Emperor group is ready to move out. Is it all good on your side? Blip shouted over to Kong. Quickly, Kong put down all of their IDs since Quinn was the last group. All good here, Kong shouted back, and it was time for them to depart. The two groups, although going to the same area, would leave at different times. Blip's Emperor tier group had left first and were already on their way towards a black mountain in the distance. Kong's group was now outside the shelter in their 5-man teams. In total, there were 5 groups of 5, making them a large team of 25. Kong had ordered one of his men to give a map to each of them. High-tier beasts usually had some form of intelligence, and there were 2 things they needed to remember. 1, the beast wouldn't always stay in the same place. They only knew the area, and 2, when the beast was weakened, it would often try to run away to recover. The most important thing was to fire a tracker into the beast as soon as they saw it. Then they would still appear on the map. They would know where it would be even if it ran away or decided to move to a different area. This is where Sam noticed a problem. Kong had given each of his members a trapping device and a tracker to shoot at the beast, yet the other groups had only been given a map. All right, let's get going if everyone has everything they need. The journey will take approximately 1 hour. We will go at a good pace so we don't tire out. We shouldn't run into as many beasts if you stick with us. When we get to the area, the groups will split up. If you find the beast, you must report its location to us via the transmission device, and one of us will come and fire a tracker into it, Kong said. Remember, the most important thing is to listen. I have more experience than the rest of you. Kong, Sam called out. Shouldn't we all have a tracker device per group? If we encounter the beast first, By the time we report back to you, what if the beast runs away?" Kong looked a little annoyed at the question, as if Sam was being an annoyance. "First off, this equipment is expensive, and we don't have much of it. If I give these trackers to you guys, you'll go fire them away as soon as you see the beast. If you miss, then what? I trust these guys, and that's why they have been given the trackers. And are you telling me that your group is so weak that you won't be able to hold off 2 king tiers on their own?" There was more Sam wanted to say. The tracker device was shot out of a gun-like device. All of Kong's teams were melee users. It would have been best to give the trackers to either a telekinesis user or a ranged user who would be able to attack them from afar. And was Kong really expecting these guys to hold off king-tier beasts? That's when Sam realized something. These guys had never even fought against king-tier beasts before. It was the first time for everybody here. Only once, by chance, had Sam experienced it himself, along with Nate. The horror and strength. Perhaps Kong wasn't able to imagine the difference in power going from an advanced to a king tier. If he didn't realize this, then perhaps Kong's leadership would be the death of them all.
I must
Sam
light.
thought. Episode 569, The King Tier Hunt. The large group had yet to leave the shelter's perimeter. Linda, who had been tasked with keeping an eye on these guys, was keeping track of everything that was going on. Sam had made a good point and made a good suggestion. There appeared to be more he wanted to say, because this plan had far more flaws than one, but he remained silent. Even if he had all of the good ideas, he still wasn't fit to be a leader if Sam didn't speak out or act. Linda was considering suggesting something, but based on Kong's current behavior, it appeared that he would not listen to any strangers. However, that's when someone else spoke instead. "Kong, just remember, you are the leader now. Every time you make a stupid decision, all of us stupid people's deaths will be in your hands," Quinn said. "I know you said you don't care about us, but it looks like you don't care about the others either." "Fine," Kong shouted. He took the trackers from his men and decided to hand one out to each team, and without saying another word, they were off. Sam turned to Quinn and had a big smile on his face. "Thanks." The truth was, Quinn didn't do it just for Sam, but was doing it because his team needed the tracker. He'd need one for his plan if he wanted to get at least one of the King Tier Beast crystals and one of the Emperor Tier. Just as Kong said, these trackers were expensive, so much so that Quinn wasn't willing to fork out for one. But he knew that they would purchase them for a quest like this, but he didn't expect Kong to hold them all for himself. They'd made it to a darker part of the globe. From afar, it appeared to be a large black mountain covered in black clouds. Even though it was still midday, this part of the city seemed to be in complete darkness. This was good for them, as they wouldn't have to worry about staying out in the sun for too long like the other week. The mountain was half built into a cliff top. The bottom half of the area was where they currently were. If one were to climb up midway to the top of the mountain, one could reach the cliff top and be in a different area. The crows hadn't been on much of this new land past the cliff top, according to the information Quinn had gathered. The 2 king tiers were discovered at the bottom of the Black Mountain, in the area they were currently in. The Emperor tier was discovered in this area, halfway up the mountain and onto the new land beyond it. Travelers with a rank B or lower were not allowed to enter their new land for the time being. There was a chance of even stronger beasts where strong beasts lived. The crows were terrified by the fact that an Emperor tier had been spotted right on the border.
Garukan favors me.
"Okay, everyone, luckily we have got quite a lot of information on these king tier beasts," Kong started to explain. "There has been a lot of work done into looking into this strange Black Mountain area. Around the mountain, there are 5 different areas where the beasts have been seen. Each of these areas is linked to each other in some way. Sometimes you might have to go through another area to get to one, but you can always get to each area wherever you are. Originally, I was going to split us up into 5 areas for 5 groups. We should be able to track down the beasts in no time. Unfortunately, one team is new to all of this and will slow down," Kong said, looking at Quinn and his group. "What is wrong with this guy?" Feck said. "Does he want a piece of stray string to tie him up and for him to be used as bait? I'll do it." "Instead, we'll just split into 2 groups," Kong said as he continued to speak. "The 2 weakest groups will go with the strongest group. The other group and I can go exploring the other areas as well. Remember, there are 2 king tier beasts, and they are not always seen together. Features are a large hound-like looking creature with a large snout. It has a thick tail that ends in a ball and razor-sharp spike on its back. Both beasts are identical in appearance, with the exception that one is red and the other is black. We don't know whether one is more powerful than the other. As soon as you see the beast, report it, attempt to fire your tracker onto it, and wait. Linda was pleased that Kong had chosen to not go through with his original plan. If he was going to split up all the groups into small groups of 5, she would have had to step in and say something. There was a reason why this was a group quest and not an individual team's quest. These beasts were powerful. "You two groups, come with me," Kong said, pointing at both Quinn and Linda. She was a little worried about this, but in the end, due to the areas being close to each other, she could always use her ability to quickly go over to the other group. If there were only 2 groups, this would be fine. Still, she was annoyed that Kong thought her group was one of the weaker ones. Was it because they were made up of 4 girls and 1 boy? No, he couldn't be a sexist bastard in this era, especially when his boss, who was a woman, could clobber him in 1 hit. There were 3 options from where they were standing, 1 in the middle and 1 on the left and right. According to the map, they were currently in one of the beast's possible areas. This was a large open area with nothing but plain black solid ground and a few raised areas here and there. Then there were the 3 paths they could choose from, with areas 2 and 3 being the left and right paths, and area 4 being the middle one. And finally, there was area 5, which was at the very back. Here was also where one could scale the mountain to head off into the new area, but the King Tier beast never did for some reason. If the information was correct, perhaps it was afraid of the Emperor Tier above in the new land. Kong and the other 2 groups had entered Area 3. This area was a little harder to navigate. It was quite open again, but there were plenty of trees and tall grass in certain areas. On initial inspection, they couldn't see any beasts in the area. There wouldn't be any low-tier beasts here, since they would have been frightened off by the King Tier. However, the area was large enough that they would have to check to see if they could see the beast anyway, possibly sleeping behind a set of trees or behind a large rock. They would also have to check the other areas more than once. There was always a possibility that as a group left one area, the beast happened to come into that one area that was constantly moving. Quinn's group had eventually gone off from the others and were now behind a bunch of trees. "Okay, Fex, it's time for you to do your thing," Quinn said. Taking off his earring, Fex held it in his hand, and a puff of smoke appeared. When it disappeared, a little bull with wings could be seen. "What the hell is that? Is it a beast? Did you tame a beast?" Sam said excitedly. Quinn went off to calm down Sam. By now, they knew he could keep a secret. Quinn explained it away using his very own words by saying it was an intelligent beast they had caught. There was still much they didn't know about beasts, so it wasn't unbelievable, and it was such a rare thing. Sam knew why they would want to keep it a secret. Quinn did pop an eye on Kaz. She didn't exactly look pleased that a human knew about such a thing, but it also didn't seem to bother her to the point where she would speak up about it. "Master, you finally need my strong muscles to help," the bull said with watery, teary eyes. It was Fex's familiar Ham. "I miss you too, Ham, but it looks like I have an important job for you today," Fex said, and Ham's face was now serious as he listened. One of the problems that Quinn was worried about was trying to get both the Emperor Tier crystal and the King Tier crystal. There was a chance he was being too greedy, so he would play it safe, for now. While he was here getting the King Tier crystal, Ham would go off to the other group's location facing the Emperor Tier. With fewer of them and a more difficult opponent, it should take them longer to solve their problem. Placing Fex's communication device into Ham's ear, a tiny small circle ball, he was off and away in the sky. Returning to the others, it looked like there was no King Tier beast in their area. "Kong, a black-colored beast was spotted in the second area, but there was no sign of the red one," the other group had reported in. Episode 570, One Crow Down. A small dot in the sky could be seen high in the sky, flying across the mountain. If you have good vision, you might think it's a bat, but if you have even better vision, you'll notice this creature isn't a bat. Instead, it was a flying bull. "I promise I won't disappoint you, Master," Ham said, pumping his stubby fist and huffing his nose so steam could be seen coming out from his 2 large nostrils. "I will find that Emperor Tier beast." However, it didn't take long for Ham to find them at all. On the new land, where the cliff connected with the mountain, he could see it all. 4 humans fighting against 1 beast. "Everyone, take out your soul weapons," Blip shouted. "If you lose concentration, your life could be over." Looking at the situation, Blip could tell it was going to be difficult. That was due to the humanoid appearance of the Emperor Tier beast in front of them. It resembled a woman, except she was engulfed in flames above her head and for the majority of her body. An Emperor tier alone would have been hard, but a humanoid one was even worse. Beasts came in all shapes and sizes, but humanoid ones had a higher level of intelligence and were usually stronger. On top of all of that, it looked to be one that was in tune with the fire element, meaning it could do some serious damage. Blip was happy that he had chosen to take a small team with him, otherwise many would have died trying to face this thing. "It's charging in, get ready!" Back below on the mountain floor, Kong had just received information that the King tier beast had been discovered, at least one of them. However, there was even more information that had come through the receiver. Apparently at the moment, it was sleeping on top of a pile of rubble, and it was alone. "What would you like us to do?" the man asked Kong. "Don't attempt to do anything yet. Just wait until we find the other beast. If it starts to move or gets up, then fire the tracker," Kong ordered. Linda approved of this. It was good to be cautious until they discovered the other King tier beast, especially since it seemed like the two of them were a type of pair. There was a chance that if the other group had engaged and started a fight, the other King tier beast would have joined up from behind. However, this wasn't the real reason behind Kong's decision. Kong desired his group to have made the greatest contribution to both King tier beast kills. How was he supposed to do that if the others were already fighting? He was scared that they would have already defeated the beast before he even got there. To put it simply, Kong wanted both of the King tier beasts for himself. In the end, he even sent one of his men to go ahead of them and join Area 2. The group finally decided to move to Area 4, which was in the center of all the areas. This area was inside a cave with large tunnels on the outside. It had 4 exits in total, allowing you to go to Areas 1, 2, 3, and 5. But there was no need to. When they entered, they could see it. The red King tier beast was sleeping near the back area of the large cave. The cave was dark, but inside it was filled with the blue crystals which glistened and lit up the whole way. It appeared that the crystals on the walls around the beast were reacting to it as it breathed in and out. The crystals would light up with each inhale and dim with each exhale. "Such power," Paul said. "So much that it's even affecting the beast crystals around it." Kong turned around as he was about to inform them of his plan. At the same time, a bang was heard, and a small triangle-looking device came whizzing past his head. He recognized it instantly. It was one of the tracker devices. When he looked at who had made the shot, it was someone from the group that consisted mainly of girls. The beast's eyes opened instantly to the noises, and when it saw something coming towards it, it leaped back, allowing the tracker to plunge into the cave wall. "You idiot!" Kong shouted. Everyone drew their weapons quickly, preparing for battle. Still, instead of charging towards them, the beast ran away towards Area 5. "Look at what you did!" Kong shouted. "Now the beast has run away and we can't track it. What if it goes from Area 5 back into Area 4? "I'm sorry," the girl said, with her hand shaking, holding the gun. "When I saw the beast, I thought we needed to tag it straight away. That's what we do in our advanced beast hunts." "Now you see, Sam," Kong shouted. "Now you see why I thought it was a bad idea to let these amateurs handle the equipment." The group hadn't moved far from where they had entered, and the beast was sleeping a good 40 or so meters away. Even if the tracker came out fast from the gun, it was at such a great distance that it would never have hit. The girl started to break down in tears from the pressure and fear, and Linda went to console her. Seeing this just angered Kong more. This was a beast hunt. People needed to be strong-headed. Otherwise, why even sign up for the hunt in the first place? Kong went over and grabbed her by the wrist, dragging her, and then throwing her towards the center of the cave. "What are you doing?" Linda shouted. "Shut up! She needs to learn," Kong replied. "Go retrieve the tracker back. We can't go wasting equipment. Then we'll head back to Area 3 and head around to Area 5. There's no point. We all waste our energy going over to the other side." Due to the tunnel they would have to go through, Kong didn't want to go through Area 5 directly from Area 4. There was a downside to Area 4, even though it linked all the other areas with the tunnels, if they met a beast in between. There would be no room for movement, and the others knew this, which was why they didn't question it. The girl took a few steps forward before freezing and turning back. "On my own, what if the beast comes back through the tunnel? I'll die," she said. "Did anyone else fire the tracker?" Kong replied. "All right, I'll go," a sudden voice said, and Quinn walked to the front by the girl's side. "I'll get the damn tracker," Quinn said. "I could tell you were already shaking in your boots the moment you saw that beast." He then turned to the girl and said, "If you want, you can stay here." "No, if you want to waste your time, then go with her," Kong complained. "But she needs to be punished for what she's done." "Kong, will you chill out?" Sam interrupted. "We're on a serious quest where anyone could die. and you're acting like a spoiled brat." Sam couldn't take it anymore, and for the first time he had said what was on his mind. His and his teammates' faces were flushed with rage. Fex sat by Sam's side, twiddling his fingers. "Just try it. Come on, let's see you try," Fex thought, with his finger twitching. While everyone was busy arguing, they failed to notice that Quinn and the girl were already halfway there, but there was someone else running towards them. Linda. She would never have let a member of the faction go out on their own in such a dangerous place. This was the final straw. Once they had returned with the tracker, she would reveal herself and take over. It was too dangerous to leave Kong in charge now. Linda was running after them when she heard the commotion behind her. She had turned her head to see what was going on. It looked like a fight was going to break out. "Should I stop them now?" "Everyone stop," Linda said as she turned around. "From now on, I will be taking charge." The others were confused for a second, but then a shocked look appeared on their faces. "Huh? I haven't taken my mask off yet. Why are they all so shocked?" Then came the sound of a large, heavy weight crashing to the ground, followed by a loud thud. She could see it when she turned around. The mighty King Tier beast was back. It had come back, and it was in between where Linda and the others were, and where Quinn and the girl were placed. "Well, I didn't expect this, but I guess it's time to improvise a little," Quinn thought. The little girl was shivering, scared and terrified. She wasn't going to move. Quinn had to pique the creature's interest. Using all of his speed and activating his boots, Quinn didn't freeze, and instead went to strike the beast's toe with all his strength, not holding back. Its large body mostly blocked what Quinn was doing, but he had performed a quick normal hammer strike. When it landed on one of the beast's toes, it slammed into it so hard that a small crater formed beneath it. The beast howled in pain. "That got your attention, right? Come on!" Quinn shouted as he ran away from the girls and the others towards the exit. Seeing the girl frozen, using all her speed, Linda went and grabbed the girl, picked her up, and brought her back to the others. "Stay at the back. This is not your fight," Linda said. When she turned around, she wished to help Quinn, and when she did, she could see him up against a wall with the beast cornering him. The beast pounced forward, opening its wide mouth, then snapping shut with its large jaws, taking a large chunk of the cave wall with it. Where Quinn once was, there was nothing there anymore. "Quinn, you idiot! You saved a life! But what was the point if you died in the process?" Linda shouted angrily as she took off her clothes and revealed to everyone who she was. "We will avenge our crow member and take down this beast," Linda said. "I will be taking charge from here." Episode 571, Return of a Nightmare. Linda jumped into action, taking off her clothes and revealing her beautiful white and gold armor underneath. She was wearing the best gear she owned, and she was ready to go into battle. Her 2 daggers were drawn and held up in front of her. "Each team cover an exit. We're not letting this beast escape," Kong shouted. "No," Linda shouted back. "I'm taking over. No one else is dying while I'm here. It's too risky to have a single team cover an exit. Ranged users, stay in the back. When you see an opportunity, tag it with a tracker. No one else is going to die, and at the same time, we're not going to let this beast get away." "What is this crap?" Kong thought. "They went ahead and made me the leader, and then felt the need to babysit me by sending Linda? They think I can't handle a simple King Tier beast." Out of everyone, with no hesitation at all, Linda was the first one to charge in. Her aim was to gain the King Tier beast's attention. She was confident in her armor and skills to at least hold the beast. While running forward, she started to activate her ability. Her features started to change slightly, giving her a more charming look. Her eyes narrowed, and the grip around her daggers tightened. When she eventually got too close to the beast, it came at her like a bowling ball with a large swing of its tail. She leaped in the air, and the tail had missed. The blow was so strong and fierce that the wind from the swing was felt all the way to the back by the rest of the group. "Come on, we can't just sit around, let's go," Fex said, running forward, and with him the group followed. "Are they trying to get a jump on the beast and get the last hit?" Kong thought. "Well, I'm not going to let that happen. Come on, boys, let's go." With a battle cry, they too were now charging in. However, the remainder of Linda's group stood there, frozen in place. In a way, Blip had predicted this, which was why he wanted Linda to go with them. Blip expected that some of them would freeze at the sheer sight of a King Tier beast, but they needed to experience this. If they wanted to improve at some point in the future, this is what they needed to battle with. While running ahead, Fex was looking for Linda. He had seen her avoid the tail, but where was she? "Above! Above!" Sam said. Hovering in the air, she flapped her two dark black wings. Right now, she really looked like a human mixed in with a crow. Her speed and movements were faster in the air. As she swept down, the beast tried to claw at her, but she was skilled, twisting and turning to avoid the blows. When going past the beast's neck, she held out her dagger, and a cut was made, piercing the skin. "Too shallow," she said, but there was a smile on her face. Her daggers were king tier level, and the beast was king tier. Her ability was one that improved her overall skills and body structure, but it wasn't one that could be used to damage the beast alone. If she had anything less than a king tier weapon on her, it would prove difficult to hurt the beast. Hoping to do some severe damage to the beast, she wanted to aim for the same wound again. Diving in, she avoided most of the attacks that were coming her way once again. Here was the shallow neck wound she had made before. If she could dig in her blade and open up the wound more, then the others could aim for that spot. Just as she was about to reach it, a large black ball appeared from the side and hit the beast in the head. It was a heavy blow, and the beast's head was chucked to the side, causing Linda's strike to miss. At the same time, its large, fat tail was swung outward and had knocked her out of the air. She tumbled across the floor, but quickly got back up. Her Emperor tier chest piece had taken the brunt of the hit. Still, the force was strong, and she had been hurt. Damn it, I was so close! When she looked up, Linda could see that the attack had come from Kong's group. "Pass me another black ball," Kong said, and his teammate did just that. The ball was only a little bit bigger than a tennis ball. When hurling it, it came out fast and looked light, but when hitting the beast, one could tell it was heavy because it had knocked the beast back. The ball being used is made from intermediate beast crystals. It was costly for Kong, but it was the best way to use his ability. Depending on how many MC cells he used, he was able to make an object lighter or heavier. At the point of leaving his fingertips, he would be able to transfer this energy to the ball, making it fire like a slingshot. With the weight and speed, it had an even greater effect than a cannonball. He continued to hurl ball after ball, keeping the beast in place. "Kong, wait!" Linda shouted. She was partially annoyed that it had ruined her chance, and she knew that those balls would do nothing. Another ball was thrown, only this time it had swung its large tail again, and like a bat hitting a baseball, it threw the ball back towards Kong and his group. "I'm not letting anyone die!" Spreading her wings and shooting off like a rocket, she dived in front of Kong. The black ball had hit her chest pieces, and she had been thrown back into Kong. They were both sent flying back. "What are you doing?" Kong said as he shoved Linda off of him. Now she was kneeling over, and with a few coughs, blood could be seen coming from her mouth. The chest piece still remained undamaged, but she was hurt internally. "If you were hit by that, you would have died, you idiot! Stop getting in my way!" Linda shouted back in pain. With her narrow eyes, Kong could tell she was furious. Instead of apologizing, he just kissed his teeth. "Fine, I won't get in your way at all. Boys, fall back!" At this point, the men who were distracting the beast using their abilities stopped and listened to Kong's orders. "Go on, leader. Show us how it's done," Kong said condescendingly. She gritted her teeth. She wanted to punch Kong right there and then. She couldn't believe they had allowed him to become a leader. Yes, she was strong, but she couldn't do this alone. All she wanted was for them to listen to her. "Kong, you're finished after this. You're no longer a part of the crows," she yelled. Kong moved away with his group and left Linda out on her own. The beast snarled and started to walk towards Linda. It wasn't running away, and it was barely hurt. Kong was being cocky now, but if she didn't do something, then they would all die. Suddenly, a piece of red string started to wrap around the beast's head and pulled it downward. It tried to snap its head, but a flurry of wind had come out, hitting it on the nose, a sensitive spot for the beast. It then tried to lift its claws up to scratch off whatever was around its neck, but at the same time, two people from underneath had attacked each claw. One with the loud bang of a whip, and the other with his own set of claws. "This is what you were aiming for, right?" Feck shouted, pulling hard on the strings. "Then go for it!" With its head being constrained and its limbs being kept busy, the neck was left wide open. Fex and the others had come to help. Still, before jumping in, they were observant, unlike Kong and his group. They could see what Linda was trying to do, or at least Sam could. He had advised everyone on the plan. Not wasting time, Linda flapped her wings and flew forward, digging her daggers into the beast's neck and slashing upward. Black blood could now be seen seeping from the wound. but the beast was still strong. The beast pulled Fex up, yanking him from the ground with its power, but Fex's string was strong and remained broken. He allowed him to reposition, landing on the ground and making more string, tying up the beast again. With all of them working together and Sam giving orders, it looked like they were slowly taking the beast down bit by bit, and soon it looked like the beast would be killed. "Damn her, I'm out of the crows," Kong shouted in frustration. "Does she even know how much I have given up for this group?" Holding the black ball in his hand, he looked up at the beast. It was now moving far too radically for him to get a clear hit on it, while Linda remained on the ground, waiting for the perfect opportunity. "You can't kick me out," Kong shouted, chucking the black ball, but it wasn't heading for the beast. Instead, it was heading for Linda's back. "Boss!" Sue shouted. Sam had remained quite far back and was close to Linda. He had been on the outside observing the situation, giving orders and throwing in wind strikes where possible. His wind strikes were a mere tickle to the beast, but there was nothing else he could do. His mind was the only thing he could use to help in the battle. Linda had been too focused, waiting for an opening, and the only one that heard Sue's call was Sam. He turned around and saw the black ball. Sam then hurled in front of it, lifting his cape to cover both him and her. The ball had hit and was strong enough to slide them across the floor, but it eventually fell to the ground with not much damage done to either of them. Luckily, the cape was a gift from Nate and was at the king tier level. Even with the added strength of ability, the intermediate beast ball couldn't do much damage. Bringing the cape down, Linda could see the black ball, and it could have only come from one person. For a brief second, Linda was distracted, but the perfect opportunity seemed to have arrived. The beast had stumbled a lot of blood from the wound. Fax had managed to pull even harder on the string, stumbling, opening it up, and making a clear attacking place. "I have to attack now," Linda said, but before she could take a step forward, a large red line of aura had come out and hit the beast in the exact spot where the wound was. It was powerful and sharp, and chopped through the beast's skin until it had cut halfway through the throat, and eventually the beast had tumbled to the ground and was no longer moving. "What happened?" Linda thought, but then she realized she recognized the red line of aura. She had seen it so many times when watching the video. It looked exactly the same as what the blood evolver would use. From seemingly out of nowhere, a figure could be seen, and in his hand was the beast's crystal.
"Thank you for this gift. You have only made my job so much easier,"
a low, deep voice said. Looking in front of them, they saw a figure dressed entirely in black, wearing an Oni-style mask on his face and demon-like eyes on the top of his eyes. If anyone at the second military base were a student, they would have immediately recognized the figure. It was the same person who had wreaked havoc on General Duke. It was the return of the Night Demon. Episode 572, A Mistake and a Quest. "King tier beast killed. Congratulations, you are now level 32. After getting the last hit on the king tier beast, the message was all he needed to confirm the beast was dead. Quinn had already leveled up once from his multiple quests hunting intermediate beasts. The experience requirement kept getting higher, but he would often get bonus EXP for defeating a beast for the first time. Even more, if it was the first time the beast had been killed by anyone. It was the same this time. When using his inspect skill on the beast, Quinn didn't receive an instant level up quest. This meant that even if he killed it, he wouldn't have been granted a level up. The reason why he leveled up was due to the bonus EXP as well as the leftover EXP from the quests before. In a way, the system was telling him that the king tier wasn't as much of a challenge as it was once before. Standing opposite the group of people in the dark black suit that was made by Logan long ago, Quinn held the crystal in his hand. It was held up for everyone to see, and then suddenly it vanished from his hands in front of everyone. "What happened to the king tier crystal? Did he just destroy it?" a person from the crowd asked. "More importantly, what is that? Is it a human or a humanoid beast?" the others said, not wanting to get too close. Quinn was currently disguised as what the people at Base 2 knew as the Night Demon. None of his usual features could be seen, and unless one knew who was behind the mask, they couldn't tell it was him. Quinn wanted to think of a way he could take the crystals without having to give them back to the faction, and what better way than to have them stolen by some stranger who they had never seen before. When the beast came into a dark place like this, it was easy for him to use the shadow cloak to hide his body. Even if Linda could sense the presence, it would be difficult for even Quinn to deal with this many people here. They had a more dangerous matter at hand that would be a big distraction. If his friends were in trouble, he could jump in and help at any moment, but he felt like with Linda there, it wouldn't be needed. He waited for them to weaken the beast and then dealt the finishing blow, gaining the EXP. This was so he could be in top shape to face the other King-tier beast, as well as the Emperor-tier beast. After all, there were only so many MC cells, and Ki he could produce at the time. He would have to rest and recover. Now he would use Linda's knowledge against her. He knew Linda knew about his shadow powers. As long as he displayed only his vampire powers and wasn't caught, then they wouldn't be able to link the two things together. However, Quinn didn't know that Linda also knew about the blood evolver due to a slip-up from Nate. When she saw the red aura, she knew that this man behind her was the blood evolver, and she already had her suspicions about which group he belonged to. "Where are they? Who's missing?" Linda said as she looked around. She could see Fex, Paul, Sam, and lastly her number one suspect, Kaz. What? But then who is the blood evolver? There was one person that wasn't there, and that was Quinn. Even if he hadn't died and faked it, he had the shadow ability. She didn't understand how a person could have two abilities at once. Maybe one would think it would be a soul weapon, but based on what she had seen in the game, that was impossible. The game didn't allow one to use their soul weapons. The man in the black suit and demon eyes started to laugh maniacally in his deep voice, as if he was a madman.
"I had been following this shelter for a while now, biding my time, and now all of you have done the work for me," Quinn said. "It would take far too long for me to search this planet on my own, so I waited in secret day by day until finally you found the crystals I needed."
Fex had to hold in his laughter, but he was struggling quite badly. Quinn was currently delivering the evil monologue that he had suggested. Fex was the person who had helped him write the script. To throw them off course of it being one of the faction members, they wanted Quinn to clarify he wasn't associated with the faction. Even if it wouldn't do anything, it was worth a try. Ultimately, it would be nearly impossible for the faction to prove it was Quinn, even if they suspected him. That was because they would search him for the crystals, and the little display he did earlier was to place his crystal into his system inventory. As long as they remained in there, they would stay hidden. Suddenly, a black ball came flying out, whizzing past Linda's head, and it was aiming straight for Quinn, who was still in the middle of his evil laughter. It seemed like he was getting a bit carried away with his roleplay. Nevertheless, he wasn't unaware of what was happening. Holding out a single hand, the black ball had hit his palm. It was heavier than Quinn had expected, so his arm jerked back slightly, but he had still managed to stop it in place.
"He stopped it with his bare hands,"
Kong said in disbelief, and sweat was running down his forehead. All thoughts of Linda thinking that this might have been Quinn had gone out the window. This person had done something that maybe even she couldn't have done so easily, and the possibility of a student doing this? If it was true, this would have to be one of the world's strongest students, which was an impression she never got when looking at Quinn.
"You are quite annoying, aren't you?"
Quinn shouted while flexing his arm, throwing the black ball as hard as he could. It hit Kong right in the chest and threw him up against the cave wall. His weapon had knocked him out. That felt good, Sam thought as he saw this. Sam knew a little bit about the plan, and after seeing the red aura attack, he knew this was Quinn. He couldn't help but be thankful that Quinn had finally put Kong in his place. He just wished he was the one who had done it. Linda was now considering ways to get out of the cave without endangering the other students' lives. One of her men was injured. Even if she thought they could take on a single person on their own, it wasn't worth risking so many lives for a single king-tier crystal. "Head to the exit, let's get out of here," Linda said, leading the others to the closest tunnel. "You can keep your crystal." Just then, as Linda was moving along with everyone, they all heard a message come through on the receiver. "Emergency! Emergency!" the person on the other end shouted. "The Black Beast is now heading to Area 4. We have no clue what happened. It just suddenly woke up, and now it's taking off." But the message had come too late. The Black Beast had entered the room. It paused when it saw the Red Beast bleeding out on the floor and looked up at the sky, giving an almighty howl. It was clear it was a howl of pain. The beast's rage was directed at the people in front of it, particularly Linda and the rest of the group.
"Damn it, what timing?"
Quinn thought as he started to rush forward. The Black Beast was slightly larger than the red one, and it wasted no time swiping its large tail. Linda chose to not avoid the blow and take it head-on. If she could delay the tail by making it stay in place, it would give the others the chance to move. Using all her strength, she moved forward towards the tail while the rest of the faction members started to move back, hoping to get out of the tunnel entrance. For a brief second, when the tail collided with Linda, it was held in place, but shortly after her arms gave in and it hit her across the chest piece. She hit the floor several times before coming to a stop. The pain this time was far worse than the beast before. This one, it's stronger, Linda thought. Then a crack sound was heard. When she looked down, she could see that there was a large crack in her Emperor tier armor. That's impossible. This thing is nearly impossible to break. I wouldn't be hurt by a king tier beast unless... Quinn, noticing something strange as well, chose to use his inspection skill. Everyone, run, get out of here. On the order of the crows, if you do not leave this place, you will be banished from the faction, Linda screamed at the top of her lungs. New quest received. Defeat the Emperor tier beast. Reward, instant level up. It's an Emperor tier beast. Episode 573, Everything We Have. When Linda saw her chest piece crack, she knew straight away the mistake they had made. A king tier beast couldn't damage Emperor tier armor. The only thing that could would be Emperor tier and above. This was what had tipped her off in an instant. The scout team, they must have made a mistake when they had only engaged the red beast. Because they look so similar, they just assumed, Linda thought. I swear when I get back there, will be some heads rolling due to this screw-up. After informing everyone of what was now in front of them, the group listened and left immediately, including those that were over at Area 2. Every time one faced a new tier of beast, there would be a significant increase in power. This wasn't something the C&D ranks could handle. They had seen the strength of a king tier, and without Linda, even that would have been too much for them. So obediently, they had left the cave as ordered. However, there were a few that had chosen to stay behind. Specifically, all of Quinn's group were still there. Fex looked at the beast with excitement, but he couldn't stop his body from shaking. He was getting the same feeling from the beast as he had from the king tier in the past. If Quinn wasn't going, then he wasn't either. Paul knew the strength of an Emperor tier beast. He had faced them before when he had the power. In a way, it showed how far he had fallen, but he also knew that Linda alone wouldn't be able to finish this beast off on her own. If Paul was staying, then Kaz would be too. Wherever he went, she would go. As for Sam, he didn't know why he had chosen to stay behind. Was it because his team was here, or did he think he could do something to help? Unlike Fex, he felt like his legs would buckle any second now, falling to the ground. On top of all this, one member of the Crows was still there, Kong, who was still passed out after being knocked down by the black ball from Quinn. Due to the reward of an instant level up, Quinn knew this would be a tough battle. Whenever this was the case, it meant the system had declared that either one of them could be the winner, which meant Quinn would have to use everything he had, including his shadow. However, he wasn't alone, and the system didn't seem to factor that in. Having recovered, Linda flew up in the air using her wings. Her chest was still hurting, so she wasn't as fast as before. Still, as long as she was at a height, then she would be able to avoid confronting the beast. "What are you guys still doing here? Run!" Linda shouted at the ones below, but they weren't listening. She gritted her teeth and immediately turned on her transmitter. "Blip! Blip! Answer me! We have an emergency! It's one of the king tier beasts, but it's actually an emperor tier beast! Hello? Hello?" "I can hear you, sis," Blip shouted back, but he was huffing and panting. "We're in a tough spot ourselves. Just get out of there." She could leave, but the members of her faction were down below. Even if they weren't with them for long, even if Kong wasn't a life worth saving, she couldn't just leave them. However, she soon realized that even if she wanted to leave, the beast wouldn't let her. The spikes on the beast's back started to vibrate, and then, a few moments later, they started shooting in all directions at the speed of bullets. There were many, and after avoiding the first few, the spikes eventually went through one of Linda's wings. She was doing everything she could to stay airborne, but then another few spikes pierced through, and she could no longer remain in the air, falling to the ground. She was high and in pain. Seeing the ground coming towards her face, all she could do was brace herself. She closed her eyes. Huh? What's happening? When she opened them again, all she could see was a dark shadow that her body was slowly sinking through. "Get out," Quinn said. She rolled her body off the shadow to find she had only fallen a few inches from the ground. Quinn had used the shadow to cushion her fall. Once she had rolled off, the shadow had slivered back to where Quinn was and had raised behind his back. Finally, she had put everything together. "Quinn," she said. "I wonder what gave it away," Quinn replied. She didn't know how or why, but for the time being she was grateful. Quinn knew that against a beast with this much power, using his shadow as a shield would be a waste of time. Blocking a blow would take up too many MC points, and then he couldn't use the shadow as a defense. He needed to attack with everything he had from the start. And it looked like the others felt the same way. No longer was Fex nor Kaz holding back, as they all started to perform blood swipes on the creature. It was working and hurting the beast, but it wasn't enough to do any significant damage. Paul had yet to learn a blood swipe and had attempted an attack, but after being knocked away by its tail, he decided not to try again. As for Sam, he remained frozen at the back of the cave. Everyone was attacking the beast, and eventually Sam had plucked up the courage to throw a wind strike of his own. It looked similar to the red strikes that the others were throwing. Although the others were hitting the beast and causing small scratches, Sam was doing absolutely nothing. His ability in this situation was useless. Why did I even stay behind? Sam thought. Eventually, the beast seemed to grow tired of this. Then it started to run around the cave on all fours at great speed. Once it had picked up enough speed, it curled up into a ball shape, with its razor-sharp spikes acting as armor. Like a tire, it plowed across the ground and up the cave walls. Everywhere it went, it destroyed and crushed everything in its path. Finally, it began to roll towards the group. Paul had grabbed both Sam and Linda, pushing them out of the way. Then, using all their strength to make an enormous blood swipe, both Kaz and Fex put together. It had hit and slowed down the beast, but still wasn't enough. They too eventually dived out of the way. Fex, in this instance, knew even his red string would be useless. Then there was the last stand, Quinn. Gathering up the energy in his fist, he started to activate his gauntlets, causing a stream of blue electricity. He had already started the motion for a hammer strike, but he needed to time everything perfectly. He slammed his foot into the ground, and he had it hit so hard it had sunken a few inches into the dirt. "The hammer strike! This is what he used to kill the vampire knight," Kaz said. "But will it be strong enough to deal with this thing?" "No, his movements, they're different," Fex said. Instead of pulling his hand back, he twisted his body to the side and he bent down slightly, so now his right hand was towards his back foot, nearly touching the floor. Then, when the moment was right, he swung his right hand at the rolling beast as hard as he could. His fist had smashed into the right side of the beast's body, causing it to break out of its rolling position. A loud bang was heard as it impacted and nearly deafened everyone who was there. Infusing his ki and blood, he created a hammer hook. The beast was sent flying off to the left, while Quinn was sent flying back from the impact as well. "Negative 80 HP, 20 of 100 HP, chest piece was broken, defense has been lowered, durability of gauntlets is under 60%, gauntlets will now provide only 30% of stats given." Multiple messages had come up, but the pain was too great to read them. Quinn had nearly been killed from one blow alone. "Blood bank." Restoring his HP and using the shadow, he was able to slow himself down. Then he had a chance to look at the messages. The one he was looking for hadn't come up. The beast was still alive. But his teammates knew this as well, as they all fought the beast with everything they had, not holding back. The beast seemed to be significantly dazed by the blow. It was struggling to stand up on its fours and was tumbling. Blood swipes, fists, and even Linda had come in using her daggers. She fought through the pain as they did everything they could to kill this beast. It started to curl up once again, the same thing it had done when Linda was in the sky. It was as if it was about to self-destruct. "Inspect. Beast is going into berserk mode." But it wasn't that at all. The beast was going into another form. It's the final stand. It would rather die using the crystal inside its body than allow everyone else to live. If this happened, the crystal would disappear as well. Quinn wasn't going to let that happen. Running as fast as he could and throwing out his shadow, Quinn used the rest of his remaining energy to create 2 of his blood scythes. Then, using the last bit of his ki, he activated the blue shock. "Move!" Quinn shouted. They got out of the way, and right on its head, Quinn came hurling the 2 scythes. He swung from over the top of his head, downward as hard as he could. Ah! Like a grim reaper, he sliced the beast's head clean off. Quinn had used so much energy he was exhausted, and it seemed like the rest of the group was as well. Everyone had sat down on the floor for a well-deserved rest. It was a moment of peace and silence. Not one of them spoke to each other and just breathed in and out. The only one that felt like they were able to move was Sam, and this was because he hadn't helped much. "You guys, how strong are you?" Sam thought. Then another thought crossed his mind. "What are you?" Seeing the others resting, Sam decided to go over to where Kong was on the wall. He still hadn't moved, and he wanted to see if he was okay. Yes, he had treated him badly, but he was still another human. Someone else who was fighting the war with him at the end of the day. "Hey, you alive?" Sam asked, but when he got closer he could see it. His armor, from the head downward, was covered in blood. "Guys, Kong! Kong!" Sam shouted. "He's dead!" Hearing this, Quinn at first thought it was his fault. Did he use too much strength? "Someone killed him!" Sam shouted. "There's a cut on his neck!" That's when Quinn realized what Sam was trying to say. A cut on the neck? When Quinn had fought back, there was another time he had seen a slit on the neck before. Kaz! He looked and looked, but couldn't see her. The others were standing now, having made a partial recovery, but he still couldn't spot her. "Kick!" A sound came out. The sound had come from Linda. She instinctively pressed both of her hands on the wound around her neck and fell to the floor. Standing behind her was Kaz. "No one is allowed to know of our existence," Kaz said, and then her head turned to her next target, Sam. Episode 574, A Different Solution. He didn't have to wait for her to move. Quinn could see it in her eyes what Kaz was planning to do. The problem was, his whole body was sore and done for. He couldn't move his muscles no matter how hard he tried. It was a downside to using ki. Quinn's body was fully healed thanks to the blood bank, but the effects of using too much ki lingered. There was nothing he could do but wait for the body to rest. In the future, he would have to consider using it only if necessary in longer fights. Otherwise, he would be in the desperate situation he is in now. "Paul, protect Sam!" When Quinn ordered, his eyes lit up red. Paul had no choice but to comply, and he was now standing in front of Kaz's path towards Sam. Sam was deeply confused about what was happening. "Aren't we all on the same side? Why is she trying to kill me?" Surprisingly, Kaz had stopped. "Move," she said. However, even if Paul wanted to, he couldn't. He was under Quinn's control, but at the same time he felt it was right. "Listen to Quinn. He's your lead." Before he could finish the sentence, Kaz had lifted her leg and kicked him on the side of the head. Paul reacted fast enough to cover up with his arm, but the strength was too much, and his whole body was flung to the ground. Sam, seeing the sudden strength of Kaz, started to back up, and now his back was pressed against the wall. Was she holding back her strength during the fight with the Emperor Tier Beast? Did she know this was going to happen? Quinn thought. Seeing the look on Sam's face, Quinn couldn't take it anymore. He clenched his fist and pounded it into the ground. "Kaz!" he shouted. "If you aren't going to listen to me, then I don't need you anymore." The dark thoughts filled his head, and his inner desire was released. Black smoke appeared from his back, and soon, where Sam was, a large figure had appeared from the black mist. The Bone Claw had arrived. Kaz proceeded to try to kick the Bone Claw away, but it matched it with a swing of its arm. It was a battle of strength, but there was a clear winner as Kaz skidded across the floor several feet. "Huh? Where is it?" Kaz thought, and the next second the Bone Claw was directly behind her, swiping again. A clanging sound was heard, as if the claws of the Bone Claw had struck metal, and Kaz's body was pushed to the ground. Something had been hit, but there was no blood present. It's the First Family's ability, Fex thought. However, it was weaker than Bryce's. Whatever had blocked the attack, it looked like the Bone Claw's sheer power would be able to push through it soon. Kaz was on the floor, yet to recover from the blow. Then, once again, as if the Bone Claw had teleported, it was in front of her and attacked. The clanging sound resurfaced, but this time the attack had succeeded. Its large fingers looked like they were ready to scratch her face off until they were stopped, only a few inches away. A red string could be seen holding back the arm by the elbow, and Fex was doing everything he could to hold the Bone Claw back. "Quinn, we can't do this. I know what she's doing is wrong, but it's happened twice now. But think about it. What would happen if a vampire knight was to die?" Fex shouted. Hearing these words, Quinn started to think back to his time as Vincent. He had more experience of vampire life back then, and he knew the answer because of this. If he gets rid of Kaz, a vampire knight, then there would be no excuses. If they said the reason why or said it was an accident, they would simply send someone higher to look out for their group. They would send a vampire leader. Maybe that was why Bryce had even sent such a troublesome vampire in the first place. If Kaz died, he could blame their incompetence, sending them back from the mission, or a vampire leader like himself could be used to put them on watch. Whatever the case, he wasn't going to fall for it. Thinking about these things, his original desire to want Kaz dead had disappeared, and at the same time, it looked like the Bone Claw was starting to turn into mist once more. The Bone Claw, it's really linked to my true desires. It wasn't much, but it was a realization that perhaps Quinn could control the Bone Claw in the future. It didn't look like Kaz would attack Sam anytime soon. She was afraid Quinn would use his familiar again, even though he couldn't right now, even if he wanted to. Having regained some of his strength, he stood up. "Kaz, what are you doing, and after last time?" Quinn asked. He wasn't going to let some childish act fool him this time. "What do you suggest that we get rid of these people's memories?" Kaz replied. "There are too many people involved that saw your red aura. We remove their memories and alter them to make them forget. The more specific the memory you want to change, the harder it is, and it's even worse if you want to make up your own story about it. There is the option of just removing the memory completely, which has a higher chance of working. But if we just make them forget, what happens when the others in the faction talk about it? Both of these people have curious minds. She'd even sent someone to look into you." It seemed like Kaz had been playing stupid all along, Quinn thought. She even noticed that Suze was working for Linda. When they start asking about the red aura, they will go searching for why their memories disappeared. That's just how people are. Then what? To remove everyone's memories of this whole event? If one person's memory can't be removed, then we will have to get rid of them anyway. Quinn understood what she meant by curious minds, because Sia's was one of them. When he removed all of her memories, all she did was try to get her memories back, and even now she is like that. Nice. Paul had just recovered from the kick from the sidelines, but he had heard everything. It started to make him think, were the vampires going to even let their people go? He could see how far Kaz was going to go to stop humans from knowing about the existence of vampires. When he thought about the possible options that had just been presented, they were all the same to him. Even if the soldiers were forced to forget, the fact that their memories were erased would trigger an investigation. The vampires weren't so stupid to ignore this, but rather they wouldn't risk it. Are they just using this so I comply, or are they using this just to keep Quinn in check? They know he cares about humans. He needed to think about it. It was something he had to discuss with Quinn when Kaz wasn't there, something that appears to be impossible right now. While in the middle of his thoughts, a few coughs were made from behind. Quinn turned his head and could see Linda on the floor, still holding her wound. Her mouth had filled with blood, and she was deathly pale. Her crow ability allowed her to heal slightly quicker than normal humans. It was the only reason she was still alive today. Still, it wouldn't last that much longer. Walking over to her, Quinn had a determined look in his eyes. The blood filled his nose, and the scent got stronger as he got closer, but he ignored it. "What are you doing?" Kaz asked. "I'm saving her," Quinn said. "Another person is not dying, especially not because of me." "You mean you plan to turn her?" "If I turn her, she becomes one of us. Do you have a problem with them living then?" Quinn asked. Kaz just started to laugh. "You're an idiot. Yeah, sure, that's fine. But is this going to be your answer to everything, Quinn? There are only so many people vampires can turn. Even you must have a limit. Judging by your power, you're very close to it." She was right. So far, Quinn had turned 6 people. If he were to turn these 2, then that would be 8, only leaving him 2 more times he could do the blood ritual. With the way things were going with Kaz around, he'd have to do it again to save lives, while not enraging the vampires. "This can't be the answer to the problem. This is only a temporary solution. And Quinn, when you can't turn any more people, and you have to do what needs to be done, I will be there to do your dirty work. I always am," she said. Quinn knelt by Linda's side. "Blood ritual activated." "That's fine," Quinn thought. "By the time I run out of slots, I will be ready to get rid of you." Episode 575, The 7th Blood Ritual. On the new land, a landscape that could be seen once one climbed halfway up the mountain. Blip was seen huffing and panting. He was on his knees, gasping for air, covered with wounds and his wings wholly scorched. In front of him was the long-awaited crystal they had been fighting for. Depending on what type of beast it was, most of their bodies would remain until the land naturally decomposed them, although they seemed to deteriorate quickly once the crystal had been extracted. The beast they had been fighting was an elemental type. Once they were beaten, their bodies would cease to exist, leaving just the crystal in its place, and that crystal was the very thing Blip was looking at now. It should have been a joyous occasion for them all. He should have been smiling. It wasn't every day one would get an Emperor tier beast crystal. Even though he had only ever faced one before this one, he couldn't celebrate. How could he, when on this mission one of his people had died? Lying on the floor, Mitchell was there, his glasses broken, and an inconsolable sob was coming from Megan. Nate had made it out alive, but he too felt like he couldn't celebrate. This was his first time taking on an Emperor-tier beast, and he didn't wish to do it again anytime soon. "The others," Blip said. "I need to know what happened to the others." "Linda was with them, right?" Nate said. "There shouldn't be a problem then." In Nate's head, he was also thinking that because Quinn was there as well, they definitely shouldn't have any problems dealing with 2 king tiers. He would have taken that over 1 emperor tier any day. "No, the other beast. It wasn't a king tier, but an emperor tier as well," Nate replied. "Hello, Linda. Linda, reply." But there was no answer. Changing the frequency, he started to speak out to all the teams. "Please give an update on the current situation," Blip asked desperately. Nate had never seen him like this. Even when fighting the Emperor tier, he seemed calm and uncaring, but now he was more panicked than ever. He was a man who cared about his sister more than anything. "Report coming in," a voice was heard. "The teams are already returning to the shelter as ordered by Linda. She has remained behind with a few of the others. We don't know what happened to her." "You abandoned her?" Blip shouted. He opened his mouth and was ready to curse them all for leaving her behind, but Nate had placed his hand on his shoulder. "Look what happened to us," Nate replied. "They wouldn't have been able to do anything." Hearing something reasonable from someone who was usually very unreasonable allowed Blip to think a lot clearer. In the end, it was the best decision to make to save the maximum number of lives possible. This was a tragic day for them. Blip couldn't imagine how many people they might have lost today. "We have to go help them," Blip said that while standing on his 2 feet. He soldiered on through the pain, even though one of his legs was badly injured. "What? Are you crazy?" Megan shouted. "We barely survived this, and you want us to go fight another Emperor-tier beast?" Once again, she started to break down, staring at Mitchell's body. "Where does it stop?" she cried. "Why can't it go back to how the crows used to be?" Blip had no answer for Megan's cries and just remained silent. He knew what she meant. The Greylash family put a tremendous amount of pressure on their faction to deliver the crystals, threatening and blackmailing them. They were now more reliant than ever on each other for their protection, and they used that to their advantage. It caused a rush in their actions. If they were like the old crows, they wouldn't have tried facing such a beast until they were ready, or maybe they would have even spent more time doing research. A mistake in grading a tier beast wouldn't have happened. No one was at fault. They were all pushed too much to do their jobs. "You guys head back to the base. Take Mitchell's body," Blip said. "You have done enough for today." "Are you going?" Nate asked. "Of course, she's my sister. I need to at least try to save her," Blip replied. "I'm going with you. I have someone I want to see is okay as well." Due to Nate's ability, out of all of them, he had come out of the battle the least damaged. If worst came to worst, and Linda was already dead, then Nate could carry the body out and back to the shelter. He was also now even more worried. If they struggled against an Emperor tier this much, then what about the others? Even with Quinn, the blood evolver, he would find it a struggle. "Sam, I hope you weren't one of the ones that stayed behind." Back in Area 4, Quinn had placed a bit of his saliva on Linda's wound inside the cave. It helped the healing process a bit, and the cut was quite deep, and he needed to act fast. He drew blood from his hand, and he dropped it into Linda's mouth. "Blood ritual activated." "I don't know how much of this you'll be able to hear, Linda, but I'm saying this now all for yours and Sam's sake," Quinn started to explain. His knees were on top of Linda's hands as her body started to struggle. The turning process was always a tough one, but for her, if she moved about while having a wound this bad, it might kill her before the process was completed. So Quinn applied pressure with both his hands while staying on top of her. "You might be wondering how I have 2 powers, or you might have wondered, and now you have your answer. The truth is, I don't have 2 abilities, and only have one, the shadow ability. As for the red aura, that is something that all of us can do. That's right, I'm making a differentiation between you and us because we are different. Judging from our conversation, you might have heard the word thrown about a few times already, but we are vampires. No, it's not a joke, and some days I really wish it was. We feast on human blood to survive. We see better in the dark, and we are more powerful than your average human. You saw what we could do today, and we're not the only ones out there. We have a set of rules that the vampires must follow, and one of these rules is that no human must know about us. Linda, today if I wished to save your life, I had no choice but to turn you." At this point, Linda was screaming in pain as her body felt like it was on fire. She could feel everything changing inside. Fortunately, the wound on her neck had nearly completely gone. It looked like soon the process would be over. For you, Sam, you have a choice. I will not force you to become one of us. You heard us talking before, but there is something we can do for you and you only. Quinn paused before giving the option, as memories of doing this once didn't really go down well. We can remove all of your memories. I don't know how you will act. Maybe you'll try to find out the truth, but you wouldn't have to live your life any longer being human. If we just remove his memories, it's unlikely they will find out, right, Kaz? Quinn asked, hoping she would agree. He wanted to at least give Sam an option. I will allow it, but if he finds out again or starts digging around on his own, then I will have to put a stop to it. Remember, he also has that busy body of a friend of his. Sam thought about it for a while, but instead of thinking of all the negatives, of no longer being human and having to consume blood, Sam could only think of the positives in all of this. Sure, Quinn had only told him briefly what it was like to be a vampire. Maybe Sam didn't understand how the changes would impact his life, but was the one he currently had worth holding on to? Nate, you keep getting further and further ahead of me. Maybe one day you'll be too far for me to reach you, Sam thought. If he didn't do something, then everyone would leave him behind. Quinn, you don't have to worry, Sam replied. I've made up my mind. At that moment, an almighty yell came from underneath Quinn. A surge of power could be felt under his knees. He quickly jumped off and stood back. No, don't tell me she's another banshee. I can't go through with that again, Vex replied. The screaming had ended. It wasn't as loud and piercing as before, which ruled a banshee out of the equation. The question was, what had Linda become? Congratulations. The blood ritual was a success. 7 of 10. Cursed family members created. Episode 576. Moving on. Seeing the notification screen, Quinn prepared himself for the worst. There was always the chance that someone could be turned into something hostile. If Quinn was correct, he had an idea of what Linda might turn into. There was once a similar situation in the past, one where someone was close to death, Peter. For him, he had turned into a ghoul, needing to feast on the living to evolve and live. On the ground, on the first inspection, she looked no different. Her body was moving fine, but Quinn could hear no heartbeat. You have created a basic Draugr. Draugr, an undead creature that possesses superhuman strength. They contain super healing abilities and have possible evolutions in the future, which will allow them to gain new abilities unique to the Draugr. Its natural nature is snappy as it has a short temper. Its strength is on par with its creator. However, it will not scale as the creator gets stronger. All other stats are half those of the original creator. Must feast on human flesh to evolve and heal, but it is not necessary to consume. If never fed, it will continue to live as long as it remains uninjured. It was as Quinn had guessed. It was another Category B subclass. But he was relieved. He had saved her, and it looked like she wouldn't try to kill everyone on sight. Now off the ground, she placed her hand on her neck. The wound has completely healed. She looked at Quinn for a brief second, and then her other hand started to fiddle somewhere. Before the others knew it, she had grabbed her dagger and leaped towards Kaz. Vex had reacted the quickest, tying his red string around her arms in an attempt to hold her back, but he soon found out that even with the red string, she was too strong. While she carried on moving forward, he was being dragged along the floor with her. Yep, just sit there and watch, guys. It's not like a little help would be appreciated, Vex said, grunting. Still, she was slow, and Vex's string was slowing her down. Quinn had eventually recovered enough to stand in front of her and hold her back. Linda, what's wrong? Are you okay? He asked, thinking if there was anything in the description he had missed. Why did she suddenly try to attack Kaz? Linda screamed in anger. Quinn, I am in your debt. I heard what you said. I know what I have become. I can feel it. I can tell I've changed, but I can't blame you for this. You killed the Emperor Tyr, and then you saved my life. There were no tears or sadness in her voice. Instead, it seemed like there was just pure anger pouring out of her. But her, she tried to kill me. She slit my throat. How can I stand here when the person who hurt me is right there? How do I explain to my brother what I have become? Well, it's simple, Kaz replied. You don't. Otherwise, I'll do the same thing I did to you, to him. Turning his head around, Quinn was now the one who had snapped. Shut up, Quinn shouted. It was so fierce that Kaz had jumped back and raised her hands. In her head, she had imagined Quinn attacking, but there was no such thing. What the hell was that? Calm down, Linda, Quinn said with his eyes still glowing red, and a strange feeling was felt in her body. She felt compelled to listen and follow. Good. Believe me, Linda, I didn't want any of this to happen. Not again, and I understand how you feel. I really do. Let's just take this one step at a time. Usually, Linda would have thought about things and not acted so impulsively as she had done, but there was a wave of strange anger inside her every time she looked at Kaz. Quinn, I'll keep your secret, not just to protect you, but to protect the people I care about as well. But that bitch better watch her back, Linda said, nice and loud so she could hear. Looking at Sam and what had just happened, Quinn himself was having second thoughts about turning him, but he had no choice. Kaz, we'll do the other one back at the base, Quinn wasn't asking, but this time he was telling her. Linda was an emergency. Sam's can wait. And if he tells anyone about this, what are you going to do then? Kaz asked. Quinn turned around and looked at her. Well, then you will just have to try to kill me for spilling the secret, won't you? For the first time she had come here, Quinn had caused her to get goosebumps. This feeling of dominance one person had over another was only felt by her by other leaders, which Quinn never gave off before until today. She hoped he was joking about those words, but he was dead serious. It looks like I might have to make an in-person report soon. There were still a few problems they needed to sort out before they could even think about leaving the area, and one of them was on their way. Linda! Linda, can you hear me? Please reply. Are you all okay? Blip asked. Blip, Linda replied. She paused for a second, thinking of what to say before she finally replied. I'm okay. We're just recovering for now. Hold on. We're coming to Area 4. We'll be there in about half an hour, Blip said, and the transmission ended there. Quinn, what am I? Am I like you? Linda asked. We don't really have time to explain. I promise when we can meet up and I can go through it with you all, I will. But there's something more important right now. You might not be able to tell, but when one is turned, they lose their ability. There's a chance that you can still learn your old one. Some abilities are compatible with both humans and vampires. However, you'll have to relearn it from scratch again. For now, it's best if you don't take part in anything that would require you to show your ability. Otherwise, the people at the base will find out. She paused, closed her eyes, and tried to transform, but she felt nothing. Her heart had sunk at that moment. That was one of the more daunting things for her, one of the realizations that she was no longer what she once was. Her family ability, the ability that she and her brother shared, was why they had called the whole faction the Crows in the first place. Still, there was hope she would have the same ability. That should be fine, Linda replied. After an event like this one, I don't think we will be going on any big expeditions anytime soon. Besides, I mostly do admin work these days anyway. The next thing they needed to sort out was Kong's body. Quinn went over to it first, and with his finger, he dipped it in and took a few drops of blood, placing it on his mouth. AB positive blood type consumed, +1 stamina point. Kong had been killed, and Quinn was unsure of when it had happened, but there was no chance of saving him. Honestly, he was starting to wonder if he even would have. With his slots filling up quickly, he would have to start thinking about those he wished to turn and those he didn't. He wasn't a complete saint that could just go around saving everybody. For Linda, he had still thought things through. She would make a strong ally where they were currently, as co-founder of the faction. She could even help them move around and find out even more information. But for Kong, he wouldn't have been able to provide anything. We need to get rid of the body. Maybe we can just bury it and say it was eaten by a beast or something, Quinn proposed. That's when he noticed that Linda's eyes were being drawn over to the body. It reminded him of Peter again. I'll do it, Kaz said, while walking past Linda. She had snatched one of the daggers from her hand, too quick for her to react. Then, standing in front of the body, she started to strike at it. The King Tier dagger had sliced through to the bone, and the rest of the body like butter. What Quinn noticed, though, was that even though she was moving so fast, the blade was cutting multiple times. One strike had caused at least 5 to appear on his body. He had seen this happen before as well, with Bryce. The First Leader's ability, it's a strange one, he thought. Eventually, the body had been minced up so much that it did look like mincemeat on the floor. Linda, I hate to do this to you, but it will be easier this way, Quinn said, shaking his head. I order you to eat. His eyes glowed red. He had used his influence skills, and at the same time, her being part of the same family, she felt like it was something she had to do. On top of this, her new body had natural urges to go in. But she was more strong-willed than Quinn thought. She didn't complain. She didn't ask what he was doing, but instead, she just did it. Once the body was completely gone, all they could do now was wait for Blip and the others. Status, level 33. 0 of 204,800 EXP needed. Strength, 50. Agility, 50. Stamina, 43. Charm, 46. With no equipment on, these were Quinn's current stats. With the 2 level ups from before, he had put a stat point into strength, making it hit 50, then placed the other 2 into agility. Now that these 2 were at 50, he would focus once again on increasing his charm points to the next level. It seemed like he might be needing it here soon after, if he was to continue to comply. The rewards for killing the King tier and the Emperor tier beast were lacking, and honestly, Quinn was a bit disappointed. Other than the instant level up in EXP, he had received nothing else. However, he couldn't be upset for long, as right now in his system, he contained both the King tier crystal and the Emperor tier crystal as well. Currently, the highest level of equipment he had on him was the advanced tier gauntlets. A smile appeared on Quinn's face, as he couldn't stop thinking about what equipment he would get from these 2 crystals. It looked like it was time for him to visit his old forger friend, Alex Way. Episode 577, Military Base 2 returns. The group had patiently awaited Blip's arrival in Area 4. Linda was still processing what she had just done, so they didn't speak much. She wanted to be disgusted when she thought about it. Instead, she was just reminded of the taste. It felt completely natural, as if someone was remembering their last meal. Finally, when Blip and Nate had arrived, the first thing Blip did was drop to his knees and start to sob uncontrollably. When he had heard there was an Emperor tier and Linda had stayed to fight it, even though he knew she was safe, he couldn't help but imagine things. Maybe she was missing a limb or 2, or an eye had been poked out, but she looked fine. "Sis, you did a good job," Blip said, giving her a big hug. "Huh, you seem a little cold." Usually, Linda was a little cold in her attitude and words, but this time he meant literally, as his skin touched hers and he could feel no warmth. "I think I'm just drained," Linda replied. Everyone walked out together and started to head back to the shelter. Each group started to retell what happened. Blip was first, starting with the good news that they were able to obtain the Emperor tier crystal, but then ending it with a bummer when they were informed that Mitchell was dead. Linda was frustrated at this. She yelled into the sky when she heard the news, and now that it was her turn, she didn't really want to tell her brother what happened. Now that she was thinking about it, there wasn't any good news at all. The King tier and Emperor tier crystals were stolen, and a member of their team died. Still, she had to make the report and detail the mysterious man who had stolen the crystals. There was one detail she altered, and that was that the demon tier beast had run away, uninjured from the area. Her theory was that it must have only stayed in that area to look after the red one. After seeing it dead, it decided to leave the place. These were all lies, of course.
I shall aid you.
"Sis, don't be upset," Blip said. "No one could say you did a bad job. If anything, you did a better job than I did. A larger group full of weak and inexperienced individuals took on a King tier and an Emperor tier, yet only one person died. I am interested in this strange individual, though. How did he know of our plans or when we would go out on the expedition? Also, was there someone that powerful on the planet this whole time? I can't help but feel the person was originally from our shelter, most likely from the faction. What I'm worried about more is how the Greylash family will react to the news. We have to submit a report, and they will come to the same conclusion. When we get back, search for each of the members in their rooms. They won't like that we're invading their privacy, but I'm sure they will understand once we explain it to them." "Brother, they're not going to make us go back there, are they, with an Emperor tier demon on the loose?" Blip paused for a second as he continued to walk. Honestly, he didn't think it was a good idea that they should. There were 2 Emperor tier beasts on the outskirts of the new land alone. Blip couldn't imagine what there possibly could be even further in the unexplored new land. Their faction was simply too weak for a task like this. If the Greylash family insisted on them going to this new land without sending support, Blip would have to reconsider his relationship with them. "For now, we will take down any quests that are in that area," Blip replied. Blip kept his word when he returned to the shelter. They searched everyone, including Quinn, who had gone on the expedition. But of course they found nothing. What could they do without any evidence or suspects?
Not yet.
"He's alive!" Some people pointed at Quinn. "When I stayed behind, it looked like he hadn't eaten after all," Linda replied. "He was hidden between a crack in the cave walls and didn't come out until the whole thing was over." "What a coward! First he runs and gets Freddy killed, then he just hides while everyone is fighting for their lives. For a second, I thought he was kind of cool when he went forward with that girl back there." They bought Linda's lies relatively easily because they knew it was simple. The man they had seen who hurt Kong and their king tier was strong and had a strange ability. Quinn was weak and only had a speed ability. No one would ever guess that these two were the same people. There were no points awarded for this quest because no crystals were obtained. The faction did, however, agree on 2 points. Everyone's basic credit fees would still be paid, and they could take a week off if they wanted, just like any other quest. Most people felt this was reasonable. Before, it was the end of the day. Blip had asked for witness accounts of what had happened. He would have people interviewed one by one, as he would need to give a detailed report, and was wondering if he could snuff out the mysterious man. Through his investigations, he had learned what Kong had done. If that man had come back alive, Blip probably would have killed him himself. It's bad to think about the dead like that. May you rot in... may you rest in peace. His investigation led to nothing, and he was done with the report. All he could do now was wait and see how the Greylash family would respond. The next day there was a morning meeting as usual, but it was mostly to pay their respects to the 2 people that had died, Kong and Mitchell. It had been a tough month for them. 3 deaths were so close together. After the meeting was done, everyone split. There weren't many who had chosen to go on a quest today. The morale of the whole base was down, especially since one of the leaders was killed. Inside Nate's room, Sam had been called. "Go on then," Nate said. "Tell me what happened." "I think you already know. The mysterious person was Quinn." Sam also told him that the Emperor tier beast was also killed, and how Quinn had taken the 2 crystals. Sam knew this information was safe with Nate. Even though he had joined the faction and was one of the higher members, he hadn't been here long enough to have any loyalty to them. He cared for people and would help them out where need be, but this place was merely a stepping stone for his goal. "So he can really take on an Emperor tier beast? He must be getting stronger," Nate said with a smile. Sam was happy that Nate didn't ask for details about the whole thing. Whether or not he had used his red aura abilities or shadow abilities, quite honestly, Sam didn't know how much he was allowed to say. But it looked like Nate just wanted to compare his strength with Quinn's. "Is there something else you want to tell me?" Nate asked. He could tell by the look on Sam's face that there was more. Sam was debating whether or not to tell him the truth of what he had found out. There was no one around them now, and he knew Nate would be understanding of the situation. They were best friends, and he would have liked to have confided in someone. "Nate, I just wanted to say I will catch up with you one day, and that time might come sooner than you think," Sam said. "I look forward to seeing it," Nate replied. With their meeting done, Sam left the room, and when he did, he could see a young-looking girl walking down the hallway. He gulped and realized that maybe he had just saved his and Nate's lives by keeping his mouth shut. "Quinn, I hope you can control her." Today, the group was in a different location as they prepared to send Quinn off. For now, he had managed to convince Kaz to turn Sam a little later, when things had quietened down a bit. That way, they could prepare for whatever he might turn into, and she seemed fine with it now. So Quinn was to head off to a different planet under the Greylash family banner. The reason being to see Alex Way. He needed a few things to talk to him about, and he wanted him to turn the 2 crystals into something amazing. "Vex!" Quinn said before stepping into the teleporter, but he wasn't alone. To watch Quinn while on the other planet. Linda had volunteered to go with him. She had convinced Blip that she wanted to talk to the other faction about a few things, see what their situation was like compared to theirs. In truth, she thought it would be a good opportunity to learn more about herself and just what secrets this world had. I know, I'll watch them," Vex replied. And with that, Quinn was gone. They didn't know how long Quinn would be gone, maybe a few days, but they were without him. Back at one of the training rooms, Blip and Nate were sitting down in their seats. It was a rare occasion, but they were to welcome 3 new people into the faction today. Like Quinn and his group, these 3 would also have to go through the assessments. When they entered, Nate was surprised by how young they looked. Most of the recruits were adults switching sides, but these guys were clearly students, like Nate and Quinn. It was rare because students would often go where their families were or stay with the military, so it was a standout factor. "You guys are students, right?" Nate asked, trying to confirm his suspicions. "Correct, sir," one of the more timid-looking students said. "Don't worry, I'm a second-year student as well, or at least was. I would have just graduated. What about you? What year and what base are you from?" "We're all first-year students who are going into our second year, sir. We are from the 2nd military base." Episode 578, Night Demon's Identity. Before Linda and Quinn had met Alex, Linda was busy taking in the information she had been given. She was starting to think about the Crows and their place in all of this. The Greylash family didn't care about their faction. They simply saw them as a tool to be used. The deaths of their members were just a number. That's when she noticed it. People dressed in strange white robes gathered around the shelter. In an instant, she knew who they were. They were members of the Greylash family. I wonder what they are doing here. They have only been to the Crow's base once when we were first set up. She was interested, but she was here for Quinn for now. When Alex saw someone approaching, his vendor got excited. He sat straight up and cleared his throat, since it hadn't been used for the whole day. Welcome, sir. Here I only offer you the best of the best. If you're not interested in any of this standard stuff, I can even personally craft you something. Clicking his fingers, you won't be disappointed. Quinn paused for a bit. He seemed to remember Alex being quite a problematic person, grumpy in a way, but his personality had done a complete 180-degree change. Hello, Quinn said. Hello? Alex replied back. Quinn paused. He was waiting for Alex to recognize him, but there was only silence between the two of them as they locked eyes. Hey, are you going to purchase anything, or are you just going to waste my time? Alex yelled. Scram, get out of here. This was more like the Alex he remembered. Hoping to jog his memory, Quinn held out his hands, and the shadow equipped the two gauntlets quickly. Alex's eyes widened as he saw them. Of course he wouldn't forget about working on these. It was the best work he had ever done. He looked up at the person and then realized that he did look similar to him, but at the same time different. Ah, it is you, he said with a smile. The two of them went behind the vendor, while Linda stood in front, pretending to be a customer. She was interested and listened in on what they had to talk about. She was wondering why this person in particular was so important that he had to come and see him. I was going to ask for my share of the profits, Quinn said, but it looks like business isn't exactly going well. It's this damn Civil War, Alex replied. The gear you gave me was perfect, and I was able to come up with a few great designs, but they were all at the intermediate level. That wasn't a problem, and I was starting to get a few orders of them online from the other military bases. But now with the war, everyone is looking for advanced tier and higher. I just can't compete with that. It's the same problem as before. Since I'm less experienced and was a student, no one will give me a chance. But Quinn knew it was only a matter of time. Forgers have been highly sought after, especially one of Alex's caliber. Maybe not now, but many people would be after him. Thinking about it, Quinn now also had some advanced tier equipment that he had made from the system. He had done so thanks to Edward bringing the materials, but Quinn didn't want to give them to Alex, not yet. With the way things were, it was better that no one had noticed him. If they had, the families would never let him go. Do you remember what I said before? You still want to do it? Quinn asked. Alex hesitated for a moment. He remembered that it was the only thing he looked forward to ever since Quinn had proposed the idea. But with the way things were, how could he make his own forging empire? I do, and I wish we could still do it, Alex complained. We can, Quinn replied. Quinn then went on to tell Alex about his plan to form his own faction. Quinn wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do, but it was the only thing he could think of based on his personality from the previous time. Create a faction in a time like this? That's crazy. You're crazy, Alex said. But I do like it. This place, I don't understand it, Quinn. They made me go out on a hunt every week, but I'm no fighter. I'm a forger. Every week I think it might be my last. His body was shaking slightly while thinking of the times he barely escaped fate. Look, it's impossible to leave now, but if you make your faction and find some way to get me out of this place, then it's a deal. I don't want to die just having been a vendor my whole life. Quinn was pleased with the result. With a forger as good as Alex, he did not doubt that his team would be able to grow in strength. Next, from the palm of his hands, 2 crystals appeared. As soon as Alex saw these, he nearly fell back. His heart felt like it was going to escape from his chest. He looked left, right, and left again. Where did you get these? Did you steal them? Alex whispered. In a way, Quinn felt like he had stolen one of them, so he chuckled nervously. Are you up for it? Quinn asked. You mean... No, are you kidding? Yes! Alex shouted. And for a second, everyone turned to have a look at what he was so excited about. He took a few deep breaths, bearing in his emotions before speaking again. Of course I can work on these. I just have one favor, Alex said, rubbing his 2 hands. Quinn handed him a gold money card, expecting this might be a problem. Here, use it on whatever you need, and any essentials for yourself. I'll come to pick it up with the items. On the few hunts Quinn and the group went on, they killed many beasts. Completing one hunt was like completing 5 in one go, so for now, Quinn had plenty of credits. Now that he had Linda, he even thought he might be able to get a few discounts here and there back at the base. "It will take me 3 days," Alex said. "Do you know what they can be turned into?" Quinn asked. "I don't know. I will have to rent out a forger's room and have a check, but don't worry about it. Let me just take a few measurements of you now, and I promise I'll make the best equipment possible with these crystals." After taking the measurements, Quinn and Linda said their goodbyes and would return in 3 days. Almost instantly, Alex had closed the vendor even though it was the middle of the day and rushed to get to work on the crystals. "What do you want to do now?" Linda asked. 3 days was an awkward amount of time. It didn't warrant the cost of returning to their shelter, and it was a little too long to just stay and do nothing. "If you have nothing to do you mind if we pay the base here a visit?" Linda asked. Quinn saw no problems with this, but he was curious as to why she wanted to. "This base used to be owned by the Eagles, a faction that you could say were rivals with the Crows. It's nice to see how they are handling things compared to us, now that we're on the same side. Besides," Linda's eyes then looked at someone who walked past fully dressed in a white robe, and Quinn noticed it too. "The Greylash family are here, and I wanted to know why."
I can feel it.
The Greylash family, the ones who first started the war and under whom Quinn is currently working. Honestly, Quinn also wanted to know what their aim in all of this was. There was another way Quinn could achieve his goal quicker, and that was to join with one of the current powerhouses. He didn't like the way the military ran things, so that was out of the question. But who was to say that one of the other Big Four ideals didn't match up with his own? So far, he hadn't had the best impression of things, based on how the bases were run. "Let's go," Quinn said. They had arrived at the Eagles' base, and after Linda made them aware of who she was, they were allowed in. A man was sent to escort them and was currently leading them to the founder of the Eagles. "You've come at a difficult time, miss, but I suppose it isn't too bad," the escort said, who was an older gentleman with a square hat. "Dennis is currently entertaining the guests from the Greylash family. Apparently they have some news they would like to share with the factions like ourselves." Eventually, they had been led to what looked like one of the Eagles' training rooms. It was mostly bare inside and looked to be just one large room, but many had gathered and a crowd had formed. "What's going on?" Linda asked. "The Greylash members who have arrived are having a little sparring match with some of our best members. If you want, I'm sure they wouldn't mind you joining in," the old man asked, "showing us how strong or weak the Crows have become." Episode 579, The Best Equipment. "So how did we do?" one of the boys asked with a nervous smile. The 3 boys who had come from the second base were less than impressive. They hadn't performed well on any of the assessments at all. Being first-year students, they never went into their second year and had no clue how to use their soul weapon. Unfortunately, it meant every one of them was awarded an F-rank tag. "I was kind of hoping for some good luck after the way things have been going around here," Blip said. "They can't help it. There won't be many willing to leave the military or other places unless it's for certain reasons. All we can do now is welcome them aboard," Nate replied. If the 3 boys had anything going for them, it was at least an interesting tale of how they had gotten there. At first, they had barely managed to escape the attack on the school base, leaving with the military. Unfortunately, the ship they were on was sunk by another family, and they were abducted by a different faction. However, soon that faction was attacked by another family, leaving them abandoned and left behind at an Earth station with no money. That was until one of the recruits offered to pay for the trip to the Crows to look after them. After hearing the story, Blip had a look of worry on his face. "These boys, they have to be cursed. There were 3 places they went to, and each one of them was destroyed. But looking at them, they seemed utterly innocent. They were kids with no families and nowhere to go, just hopping around from place to place." Blip put on a brave smile and welcomed them aboard. "Welcome. Why don't I show you guys around?" It was a quick tour, and all of the explanations were given as usual to them. After everything, they were left in the quest room to try and mix with everyone. After all, they would have to go on a quest at least once a week, and they would need a team for that. The room's atmosphere wasn't the best, to say the least. Everyone was still reeling from recent events and the deaths of the last 2 members. But that didn't stop one of the boys named Tink. If there was one thing he was good at, it was not being able to read the room and blabber with his mouth all day. He decided to sit at one of the tables where a group was drinking their sorrows away. The 2 other boys decided to stay standing, and were also ready to abandon Tink at any point if they chose to get rough with him. "Hey, we're new here," Tink said with a smile. kid, now is not the day for me to deal with your happy crap, a man replied. What happened? Tink asked. Even though it was only midday, the men had already had a few too many drinks. As a result, they might have been more outspoken than usual. They spilled their hearts out about recent events, what had happened, and the deaths of the others. Hey, doesn't that sound like him? One of the boys standing behind said. Yeah, like too much, right? The other one replied. The man who had just told his story raised his eyebrows. Oh, don't worry, Tink replied. It's just the mysterious man in your story. It sounds a lot like someone we call the Night Demon. Soon, with Tink's big mouth, many people had learned of the Night Demon's description and what he had done at their military base, having beaten one of the generals. They believed it after seeing how easily he had dealt with Kong. People started to try to guess who this person was and got curious. Most likely it would have been another teacher at the base. The only detail they could go by was that it was someone from the 2nd military base. Details about each other, on the other hand, were kept hidden, and only the highest-ranking officers knew where everyone had come from. This was to stop grudges from forming. If one was to learn someone was from Pure, or perhaps another faction before this, it could cause a few heated clashes. Eventually, Fex and the others had entered the quest hall as well, and it didn't take long before their ears picked up the word. Hey, so do you know anyone from the faction from the 2nd military base? Maybe we can find out who the Night Demon is. What the hell was going on? Fex thought. Fex wasn't at the school at the time the Night Demon came around, but Quinn, when telling stories of what happened at school and with the others, had come to learn about it. Before things got out of hand, Fex needed to meet the source of the rumor and influence their memories. Still, after staying in the quest room for a few more minutes, it seemed like everyone already knew. Usually something like this would go by without anyone caring, but the people wanted something to take their minds off recent events, and the search for the person who had stolen the King Tier crystal was the perfect thing for them. The information had been spread so widely that Blip, who was in his own administrative office, had also come to hear of them. He sat down with his legs crossed on top of the table, had a small little pen in his hand, tapping it against his mouth. Someone from the 2nd military base. The only other people from there were those kids and that older man. Then a student who was supposedly meant to die comes back, and Linda's sudden interest in going with this student to another planet, even though she never cared for such things before. Blip said she was sure he had figured it out. It's Quinn. From everything he had heard and from his sister's strange actions, this was the conclusion he had come to. He wondered why his sister was acting a little odd, and now he knew why. The main problem in all of this for him was why did his sister, who shared everything with him, choose to hide it? Going onto his holographic screen, Blip looked at the report he had sent to the Grey Lash family. It stated that he didn't know the identity of this mystery person, but now he did. Well, technically, when I submitted the report, I didn't know who it was, so I'm not lying. He was starting to wonder if his sister had lied about other things too. What if the Emperor Tier Beast was killed as well? In the end, he chose to leave things as they were, a mystery to everyone. If there was one person he trusted, it was his sister Linda. If she didn't want to tell him, then there was a reason why. The exact 2 people Blip was thinking about had arrived at the shelter. The teleporter they had gone through directly linked them to the new area, and the first thing Quinn felt when he arrived was that it was cold. Looking down, his 2 feet seemed to be on top of the ice. The whole place seemed to be in a mountainous area full of snowy hilltops. As for his new partner Linda, she hardly felt a thing. Her senses weren't completely gone like Peter's. It seemed like every undead was slightly different in that sense, but they were still heavily dulled. Before coming through the teleporter, Linda had already sent them details. While here, they couldn't leave the shelter base anyway without accepting a quest, and it was impossible to do so since they weren't part of the faction. So all they could do was explore the shelters, and that's exactly what the 2 of them were busy doing. While walking around, Linda asked a few questions about herself, and Quinn did his best to answer. Although he had to admit he didn't know much, after all these questions were done, he could see Linda was looking lost. It was common. Nearly every person he had turned at one point was lost. While walking mindlessly around the shelter, Quinn decided to tell her everything so far, his story in all of this. He thought it could bring the 2 of them closer and to a more trusting relationship. He explained that he was human as well, how the vampires lived on another planet, and that he was here on an important mission, even though Kaz was sent to look over him, which is why they were having internal disputes. That damn girl! While listening through everything, she felt like it was a crazy ride for a mere student to go through. She thought her life was hectic, but Quinn's had made hers look like a walk in the park. Are you not worried that I will tell my brother? Linda said. I know you won't do that, Quinn replied. You stayed behind to let everyone leave that cave because you care about their lives. Just like Paul is keeping his mouth sealed because of the people back on the vampire planet, you will too for the crows. He was right, and it looked like Quinn had a lot more insight than she first thought for just a student. "Quinn, what's your endgame in all of this? What are you planning on doing?" Linda asked. "I won't work for the vampires or humans," Quinn replied. "I want to start my own faction. Stop this madness on both sides. To do so, I'll have to climb to the top, have a faction that is larger and more powerful than any of the powerhouses here, as well as being more powerful than any of the other vampires back there. I know it sounds impossible, but a lot of things have sounded impossible to me before, but still." This answer satisfied her. She was happy that at least she wasn't with some sort of maniac who had grand ambitions to rule the world, or to cause mass genocide. At least that's what she hoped. Quinn had finally found it while walking around the shelter's marketplace looking for pieces of equipment bearing Alex Way's name. Surprisingly, he hadn't seen any travelers wearing that name on their gear, and he was beginning to be concerned. That was until he came over to a market stall that was filled with his work. Sitting there behind his booth, Alex had a broad look on his face. "Hello," Quinn said. Episode 580, The Greylash's Strength. Quinn had seen his fair share of sparring matches. In the past, a spar would have meant a light fight between two contestants. The aim was just to showcase individual skills and help each other improve. But in recent times, the word had changed due to healing abilities and medical care only getting better. Nowadays, it's an excuse for two people to get into a full-on fight, stopping just before killing the other person. At school, the students would even organize sparring matches. The air would be charged with excitement and cheers, as would the faces of those in the vicinity. It was as if their gladiator instincts had resurfaced. Quinn, on the other hand, never joined. This time, though, it seemed a little different. As the two of them, as well as the old man, approached, they were directed through the crowd. There were no cheers. Instead, there was just a look of concern on the faction members' faces. Off to the side, there was already a line of around 5 injured men and women. It seemed like the old man was even a little confused about what was going on. Eventually, they reached the front row. The faction members had naturally formed a square shape around themselves that would act like a ring. The leader of the base, Dennis, looked a bit like a punk rocker, even if he looked to be in his late 40s. He had a denim jacket with several different patches on it, and his hair was golden brown in a mohawk-like shape. "Don't tell me this guy can turn into an eagle," Quinn thought, after picturing the man as a bird, that it was quite easy. Is that why these two factors are rivals? Because they both have a bird-transforming ability? Quinn just started to chuckle at the idea, but quickly stopped himself. The look on the man's face was one of irritation. Even the old man who had brought them over knew not to say anything at the moment. Standing opposite them on the other side were 9 men in white martial arts robes, while the one in the middle had a slightly different design. Instead of a single piece, it was cut into 2, to separate from the pants and the top. The sleeves were also cut differently. In the center, 2 people were fighting, one in the standard white robe, while the other, Quinn could presume, was a member of the faction. It was easier to tell who were members of the public and who were part of the faction at this shelter due to their similar clothes to their leaders. The fight seemed to have been going on for a bit before they came. The Eagle member was injured all over his body. He held his hand, and it was shaking not from fear but something else. "You're finished," the Greylash member said, walking over. Using one hand to support the other, the man threw out a diagonal shape, forming a slash of wind. Still a simple step to the side, and the Greylash member had avoided it. He took 1 step forward, leaped up in the air, and started to spin it in a spiral-like manner. Electricity formed all over his body and from behind, boosting him forward like a lightning bolt. His head had hit the man right in the stomach, shocking him and causing him to shake on the ground. Once the Greylash man had regained his footing, he stepped on him, running lightning through him again, shaking the person on the floor. "That's enough!" Dennis shouted. "You win!" "Very well," the man in the center of the other members said. He clicked his fingers, and the other man had stopped, lifting his foot off his opponent. "We will rest for now, and we can resume tomorrow. Make sure you bring your very best." There wasn't much said after that, and the man was gone. The crowd started to disperse, but not without them talking about what had just happened. "Sir, what happened? Wasn't it meant to just be a simple spar?" the old man asked. Dennis recognized Linda and realized it wasn't the best place to talk, so he invited the 2 of them and the old man to his office. When they were finally there, he could speak more openly. "Linda, I know we had our differences, but after seeing them, I thought you should hear this as well." Linda felt a little strange. They were rivals in the sense of competition. not rivals that would fight with each other. Still, because of this rivalry, they weren't exactly friendly to each other, and it was the first time she could see him being nice. They said they are currently doing a routine checkup, trying to see the strength of all the factions under their banner. It seemed like something was happening soon, but I quickly realized that it was all a lie. They didn't want to see our strengths, they wanted to show off theirs. Lately, they have been putting more pressure on us, and more men are dying out on the field in these hunts. I have been less than polite in my reports. They told them to do it themselves and send their men if they thought it was that easy. It seems like they really did send their men. Almost instantly, they mentioned a sparring match. You saw the result. One person of theirs had beaten 5 of our best in a row. The Eagles were a medium-sized faction similar to the Crows. If what he said was true, then their group would also suffer the same fate. Dennis tensed his fist. I've decided. Tomorrow I'm going to be fighting personally. I need to show them the strength of the factions. I always thought the only reason they haven't borderline slaves is because they were afraid of our power. I'm not sure how true that is anymore, but if I don't show we do hold some strength, they'll continue to push us around. Linda, being a co-founder of the Crows herself, understood how Dennis must have felt. It wasn't just the fact that they were stronger, but there was no respect at all. In that one little fight they could see it. No respect for the lives of those outside of the Greylash family. Linda, while you are here, can I ask you a favor? Dennis said. I would have never thought in a million years I would be asking you this, but tomorrow will you fight alongside me? What? Linda asked, confused. It's clear that none of the members, apart from me, can hurt those guys, and the one in charge hasn't even shown his strength yet. I was thinking maybe we could pretend you were a member of the Eagles, win a few fights to show that we aren't that weak. Would they not know? I'm a co-founder of the Crows. They would recognize me if I helped you out, she replied. Linda, these people didn't even know who I was. They didn't care as long as the faction is doing their job. They don't remember our faces, names, or anything. That's how arrogant they are. I'm sure after this planet, they will move on to the next. Linda thought about it for a while. She agreed that the Greylash family's treatment was getting worse by the day. Maybe Dennis was right. If they realized how weak the factions were, their attitude might change. She wanted to say yes, but her new body was stopping her. She no longer had her ability, and she hadn't learned everything about herself. Super healing, super strength, maybe these things could be explained away by her equipment. But what if she went too far and killed a member of the Greylash family? I'm sorry, but I can't. We just recently fought with an Emperor-tier beast, and I'm still recovering, Linda said, as an excuse. There was a bit of sadness in Dennis's eyes. He must have seen more than they did to put him in this type of position. He knew she was lying. He had asked her to fight tomorrow, not today. With the healing abilities they had, she would be fit and ready to fight within a day, but he couldn't blame her. At the end of the day, she was part of another faction. I'll fight, Quinn said. Dennis lifted his head and looked at the young man who was standing beside Linda. In all honesty, he had completely ignored this person and was only focusing on Linda. Are you strong? Dennis asked. I would like to think so. Besides, I'm stuck here at the moment for 3 days. It would be nice to cure my boredom. First, Quinn thought it would be nice to fight with the Greylash family, first to test their strength. He was up against theirs. Maybe one day they would be an enemy, maybe one day an ally, and he needed to see where he stood on their power scale. The second reason was that he didn't like the smug look on their faces. It reminded him of Duke. They walked around as if they owned the place and continued to attack the man on the floor after he was already beaten. It reminded him of his bullies, a time he wanted to forget. Linda had no clue what Quinn was doing. If he was going to fight, would he show his shadow abilities, blood abilities, or just fight claiming to have super speed? Seeing that one fight alone, she knew Quinn wouldn't be able to win just using his speed. Is the kid mad, or does he have some claims to back himself up? Dennis asked. Linda looked at Quinn one last time and could just see a smile on his face. The boy was hard to read. He's strong, Linda said. Don't disappoint me, boy, Dennis said as he walked off. At the same time, Quinn and Linda had agreed to stay at the base for 2 nights while waiting for the equipment to be finished. He had agreed to take part in tomorrow's sparring match. During the night, Quinn didn't sleep like normal. Instead, he used his shadow cloak to sneak out. Then, on the victim's return, he would sneak into certain people's rooms and use his influence skill. After a whole night of taking droplets of blood from different people, Quinn had increased his stats. Strength 52, Agility 52, Stamina 46, Charm 50. To gain one stat, he would have to take droplets from 3 different people when taking blood. Quinn only took blood from those who were not members of the faction so as not to raise suspicion. People who weren't fighters in the first place. He felt bad, but he wasn't harming them in any way. They wouldn't even remember the minor annoyance he'd caused. Finally, the next day had arrived, and Quinn was ready to proceed with his fight.
You will suffer the same fate.
Episode 581, The Man with a Heart. When they walked into the training room, there appeared to be more people than there had been the day before. A few members of the Eagles were on quests. Some people simply chose not to watch the sparring yesterday because they were uninterested. Even so, the news of what had happened the day before had changed their minds, and the training room was busier than ever. The Greylash family's 10 men stood proud and smug as ever. They had their arms folded and didn't seem to want to move. Wow, they seem to be more like robots than the military, Quinn thought. Dennis wore his beast gear instead of his denim jacket this time, which appeared to be dyed mostly gold in color, making it look tacky and cheap. Quinn couldn't see it working out well on the battlefield. But using his inspection skill, he saw that it was also of good quality, all of it at the king tier level, just a little behind Blip and Linda's gear. It proved how precious the Emperor tier crystal he got was. At first glance, one would probably think the Greylash members weren't wearing any beast armor, but that wasn't true at all. Their martial arts robes were placed loosely over them. Using the inspection skill on them, Quinn was a little surprised. Apart from the leader, everyone had advanced level gear on, while the leader had king tier level equipment. The reason for Quinn's surprise was that he thought they would be at a higher level. The Greylash family had all these factions working for them and giving them crystals.
Except for that
Yet
rarity.
these people were using equipment at the same level. It meant either one of two things. Either they never took this seriously and brought in substandard equipment in their eyes, or even in the Greylash family, these people were considered the bottom of the barrel. Quinn was more inclined to go with the second option. The same person from the Greylash family who fought yesterday stood forward first. Dennis, seeing this, was a bit impatient, and he looked at Linda and the young man. He noticed that Quinn was wearing nothing but boots and gauntlets as his beast gear. He felt like an idiot for putting his trust in a stranger. He wished Linda had chosen a fight, but he couldn't force her. Because of this, he stepped forward, and Dennis was willing to take them all on. "Oh," the leader at the front said. "Well, I can't say I'm surprised. I guess the only decent one there would be the leader, after all, or maybe not even half decent." The words were spoken, and Quinn just didn't understand. These people were helping you. What was the point of putting them down like this? Wouldn't a friendly relationship with these people work out better? Dennis didn't reply, and instead he assumed a fighting position. "Very well," the leader of the Greylash family said. The fight had begun, and Dennis began to transform almost immediately. His hands began to morph into strange claws, and huge giant wings appeared on his back, nearly filling the entire space. No longer did Quinn think Dennis's armor looked tacky. With the golden armor, it suited him perfectly. The Greylash member wasted no time in performing the same move as last time. He took a step forward, and he leapt up, spiraling his body forward, but the next second he was landing flat on his back. He'd hit what appeared to be a concrete wall, but all he could see when he looked up were the large wings that covered his entire body. The audience felt the wind from the power as they quickly opened them, and some in the front row had to use their strength to stay upright. Before the man could even get up, Dennis had dug his claw into his shoulder, and immediately it started to soak red. It had gone through his robes and whatever shoulder pads he was wearing underneath. "Do you know that an eagle's grip is 10 times stronger than a human's?" Dennis said. The man was panicking, and he started to fire bolt after bolt. Little whines of pain were seen on Dennis's face, but he wasn't going to let go. With his other free hand, he dug that one into the other shoulder as well. "This is payback." Swinging his head back and then forward, he banged his large head right across the man's face. Blood splurged everywhere as his eyes went white. Quickly he let go of the man, allowing him to fall to the floor, knocked out. "What the? Does that man have an iron head or something? That surely would have hurt both of them," Quinn said. "Dennis is a strong person," Linda replied. "While the Crows have Blip and me, in the Eagles there was only ever him." Lifting his hand in a fist towards the sky, Dennis declared victory. It looked a little cheesy, but the Eagles were loving it, as they broke out in cheer for their boss. It was a nice atmosphere, Quinn thought. Next, the leader himself seemed to step into the ring. His face was unworried, and he looked calm. 2 other members of the Greylashes came and took their man to the side. "Our men will heal him," Dennis said, "and it looks like they will be healing you next." A slight smile appears on the leader's face. "I'm glad you could at least beat him. He was the weakest of the students I brought with me today." "Students?" The people in the crowd began to whisper in shock. It looked like Quinn's guess was right. To the Greylash family, these people were still learning, still amateurs, which was why they never gave them good equipment in the first place. A lot of the people in the crowd thought they had sent some of their elites, which was why they didn't stand a chance. But there was just that much of a difference in power compared to the top families and them. Quinn didn't know if what he said about being his weakest student was true or not, but he could just find that out himself. "There's no point in wasting any more time, right?" the leader said. "I can tell you're decently strong. Probably as skillful as my best student, but we didn't come here to give you hope. We came here to crush you." As lightning pulsated through the palm of his hand, the man said. The only rule that was set up before the fight was that there was no use of soul weapons. If either of them used their soul weapons, then there was a good chance one could have died by accident. The fight had started, and in the leader's hand, it seemed like he had solidified the lightning going around it to the point where he had made a physical lightning bolt. Seeing this, Dennis decided to curl up and cover himself with the wings, but as it left the leader's hand, in an instant, it had dug into one of the wings. The pain wasn't great, but it was stuck in place. His wing was paralyzed. While distracted for a brief second, the leader had used the same spiraling move to shorten the distance between the two. Both of the leader's hands were coated in a solid form of light, making them look like large blades. He struck, and Dennis moved his head to avoid the blow, but then from the lightning-formed hand blade, sparks shot off and struck the head. It hurt, but it wasn't enough to knock Dennis out. Gritting his teeth, he tried to grab onto the leader, but the leader quickly avoided them all. The two of them would avoid each other's blows, but each time Dennis did, he would still get hurt. Slowly, he was being worn down. The movements between the two were drastically different. When Dennis threw out his punches and kicks, they were like a street fighter. It was rough with no precision and sloppy, but there was one thing Quinn couldn't deny. The man had heart. He had been badly beaten, yet he continued fighting just as hard as he had been doing from the start. Then, for the first time, something had changed. Dennis had taken a blow directly from the blade. He screamed in pain as he felt all his cells being hit with great power. "Why are you even still fighting?" the leader said. But Dennis didn't say anything and just had a smile on his face. Before the leader noticed, Dennis's large wings had encased them both, giving him nowhere to run. The claws dug into both of the leader's shoulders. "I'm taking you down with me," Dennis said. Refusing to let go, he flew in the air with the leader. The whole time, the leader was using all of his abilities to shock Dennis. The pain was felt, but he was never going to let go. "What do you plan to do, you idiot?" the leader said. Then, at great speed, bringing the leader's body closer. They both fell like torpedoes towards the floor. "Everyone clear the area," the old man said. Bang! The two of them were slammed into the floor together, throwing up pieces of the training room floor. The dust from underneath the tiles was thrown up. As the dust started to settle, they could see the shadow of a single man. Unfortunately, the man still standing was the leader. His shoulders were bloodied, but somehow he had managed to get out of Dennis's hold while Dennis lay still on the floor. The leader hated to admit it, but the fight was a lot harder than he fought. "Well, your best man has been defeated and all of us here are still standing strong," he said. A few moments later, Dennis had woken up and regained consciousness. His face said it all. He was devastated by the loss. He walked over to his men, who continued to treat him while the leader looked in his direction. "Is there anyone else who wishes to fight? It will be an interesting report for us to make. That out of an entire faction, the leader was able to beat a single student. Is there really no one else?" That's when he looked towards Linda, his last hope. They didn't need to win, but just to prove them that they weren't weak. That's when he noticed something else. The young man who always stood by Linda's side was no longer there. "I'll fight," Quinn said. His tag could be seen clearly on display. He was a C rank, and the others were confused about why this young man was so confident. Episode 582, Punches and Kicks. The leader was injured quite a bit from the fight with Dennis. He was putting on a brave face to make it seem like the fight was more one-sided than they thought to his students and the others. He had also used up nearly all of his MC points, so he was in no condition to fight further. After defeating the leader of the faction, he believed no one else would volunteer to come forward. He was also sure they had used their best men earlier. Maybe there was one or two out on a hunt, but he still had 8 other students that were strong and ready to fight. When he saw Quinn walk out to the front, he felt strange seeing how confident he was. But that all went away as soon as he saw the C rank tag. You're just a young fool, aren't you? After your leader beat one of our students, you think you can defeat another. Lemon, go ahead and teach this fool, the leader said, taking a step back, and one of the students rushed to the center of the ring. The ring and the crowd of people had to move slightly to a different area before the fight could start. The reason for this was that the floor was destroyed in the previous battle. While they were busy moving, the others were trying to figure out who the young man was. I've never seen him before. Is he part of the Eagles? One asked. I think I saw him come in with Linda. Oh, so it means he's from the Crows, but he is only a C rank. Surely it would have been better if Linda had fought. Right now, Quinn had his gauntlets on, but even after seeing this, Dennis didn't have much hope. It meant he was a close-range fighter, and it looked as if the lightning user was both great at close combat fighting and mid-range fighting. Having seen the Grey Lashes fight yesterday, Quinn was trying to figure out the best way to deal with them. He could always use his shadow, but the lightning was fast. On top of that, Quinn didn't know if, during the Civil War, the other families would care about him being protected by Vorden's family or not. They complied before because Vorden belonged to an original family that was probably under the Big Four. But Vorden never mentioned that the Blades were under the Grey Lashes, so Quinn could assume that due to the Civil War, they no longer cared and would have a great interest in the shadow again. So if he could, he would avoid using it, but honestly, Quinn didn't feel like he would need to. What are you going to do, Quinn? Linda thought. Now, don't let me down, boy, Dennis said from the side. The fight had begun, and just like every other fight, the lightning user started with a step and spiral spin towards them. Don't you guys ever do something different? Quinn said. This was an easy skill for him to avoid. As it came towards him, Quinn flash-stepped behind his opponent, and he completely missed. The man turned around and could see Quinn throwing out a fist towards his face. He lifted his arms to protect himself. But suddenly, a heavy pain was felt in his gut. The punch, it's so strong, the student thought, even though he was wearing advanced tier armor. His arms had dropped from his face from the pain. He didn't have time to prepare an attack, as Quinn was already throwing out another punch fast. Once again, he could see the punch going for his stomach. He covered up, reacting quickly enough. However, once again a heavy punch was felt around his face, a hook to the side of his temple. What the hell are you doing, Lemon? The leader shouted. Quinn smiled as he continued. He pulled back his strength, not causing suspicion, and if he could win this way, then why not make the whole Greylash family look like fools? Right now, Quinn was performing the Phantom Punch over and over. His charm stat had now reached 50 points. He was sure this would be enough for people like them to be fooled. It was perfect. The more skilled they were, the faster they would react. But for the Phantom Punch, that was better, and it allowed Quinn to get a clean hit every time. After giving a few punches, Quinn decided to end it with a kick so fast and strong that even though it was successfully blocked, his opponent was knocked out. 500 EXP gained. The EXP was a nice bonus to see as well. What happened? Was it a fluke? The old man said, who was by Dennis's side. To everyone watching, it felt that way. There was no flashy display of powers, no movements too fast that they couldn't see. The only impressive thing was the flash step used initially, but they could still predict or see where he would be. Yet somehow, the Greylash family member lost to punches and kicks. Quinn, it seems I have underestimated you, Linda thought. A boy with a foolish dream, a dream to change the world. She thought it was impossible, but for a brief second, she believed it. Was the leader lying? Maybe the student Dennis beat was their strongest student, someone from the audience said. Maybe the Greylashes did this just to scare us. The rumors were starting to spread, and the leader didn't like this. Panda, go out there and do whatever you can to get rid of him. I don't even want him to be able to lift a finger once you're done with him, the leader whispered to his top student. Panda went out there and got into a fighting position. Usually there would be a little rest between fights, but they ignored this common courtesy since Quinn wasn't hurt. Quinn was fine with it. The fight had begun once again. This time Panda didn't move for some reason. Skill Daze activated. Daze was a success. He was frozen, unable to do anything. Even if he wanted to move, something wasn't letting him. Then, when the fist could be seen coming towards his head, he could finally move, but just like before, it didn't hit his head, and instead hit him in the stomach. What the hell is wrong with everyone today? The leader shouted. Sir, could it possibly be an ability? Perhaps an illusion of some kind that we can't see but the opponent can? One of his students suggested. Based on what they were seeing, that would make sense, but it would have to be a pretty strong illusion to be able to fool his men, he thought. Trying to finish off the fight quickly, Quinn threw out a kick. The student had lifted his hand to block the kick to the head, but it had come from the other side, and he was slammed to the ground hard. "Get up!" the leader shouted, his hands shaking in anger. But Panda remained on the floor. "New skill accrued, Phantom Kick." Quinn thought about it, but if he could do a Phantom Punch, why couldn't he do the same with the kicks? Testing it at this very moment, it seems like the kick has worked. The opponent was knocked out, and the room was filled with silence. They didn't know whether to be happy or sad, because it just didn't feel satisfying to them, but it was satisfying to Quinn. "That's enough," the leader said. "It appears we are all tired, and there was one skillful person in the Eagles after all. How about tomorrow I and you have a match?" The leader was too injured today to have a fight, which is why he had suggested tomorrow, but he needed to teach this cocky brat a lesson. "No thanks," Quinn replied. "If Dennis can't beat you, then I definitely can't. He's the strongest person we have. If it's any of your students, I will be happy to take them on at any time, though. Besides, I have my appointment tomorrow." The leader was beyond frustrated. He hadn't expected an answer like that. He was sure the cocky brat would have agreed. If things were left like this, then their impression of the Grey Lashes would have been diminished. Everything he had done was for nothing, but he couldn't do anything. Without saying anything else, the Grey Lash family decided to leave it there and head back to their rooms. "Try to find out everything you can about that person," the leader asked one of his students. Quinn and Linda stayed one more night, and Dennis couldn't express his thanks enough. He was happy to see the smug look on the leader's face be wiped off, but he was now afraid that all the blame would be put on the young lad, especially when they found out he wasn't part of the Eagles, but the Crows instead. "Let me deal with that problem," Quinn said. "I owe you one," Dennis replied. "If you ever need anything from the Eagles, come straight to me, and I will personally help you out." The next day it was finally time. It was the third day, and Quinn couldn't wait to see what equipment he would get from the King Tier and Emperor Tier crystals. Episode 583, 2 Active Skills. It looked as if the Grey Lash family were planning to stay in this shelter for a while, and there were quite a few of them. While walking around the shelter, if he was to include the ones staying at the base, Quinn could spot around 50 or so of them. Quinn thought it was far too much just to see how a faction was doing. Maybe something else was up that they were not telling the factions about. Nonetheless, he could deal with that problem when it became one. He was sure they would move over to the planet where the Crows were on as well soon. The good news was that he was perhaps strong enough to plan an escape if need be, especially with Linda by his side. The Crows would hesitate to act. Right now, the two of them were walking from the base over to the marketplace to meet Alex, but they were accompanied by a few uninvited guests. "We're being followed, you know," Linda said, and honestly she was surprised at how quickly she had picked them up. "Yeah, I know, it's fine. Probably because of what I did yesterday. I wouldn't worry about it unless they tried to cause some trouble. They'll soon find out that I don't even belong to this faction anyway." The people from the Grey Lash continued to follow the two from a safe distance. However, they weren't dressed in their usual white robes and instead tried to blend in by wearing more normal traveler's gear. After talking to those who had lost the fight against the strange young man, the leader wanted to know more about his ability. Not just that, but he was hoping at some point they could pay them both back with a bit of humiliation. Finally, they had arrived at the vendor where they had met Alex. He quickly waved them over and had a huge smile on his face, which Quinn could only take as a sign. He had a closed sign on his stall. On the top of everything out on the table was a blanket to add to the mystery. Quinn wanted to just rip the blanket off and see what was underneath. He felt like a kid waiting to open his Christmas presents. However, he knew it would be better to have Alex reveal everything to him. "It was hard work, honestly," Alex said. "I think I should start with some bad news first." Alex handed back the money card and then bowed his head. "I'm sorry, but I spent all the money you had on the card." "You did what?" Quinn couldn't help but shout. There was a lot of money Quinn had saved up there. Once he had left the Crows, he was aiming to buy a teleporter so he could travel easily from the main ship to other planets. But with this hiccup, his plans were ruined. "I'm sorry, but the materials needed were more expensive than I thought, and to craft something like this, I had to pay for the best forge room," Alex said desperately. "Look, don't worry, most of the money was spent on you. I saw your tacky gear. The truth was I had finished with the crystals earlier, so I went to buy more to make you a full set of equipment." After hearing this, Quinn really couldn't be upset anymore. It was true that he was mostly wearing intermediate gear, and his chest piece was broken, whereas nearly all travelers wore advanced gear. He had bought a few pieces of equipment for the others, but he hadn't bought anything for himself. After Quinn's last reaction, Alex was now rubbing his head even more nervously because there was more to come. Actually, that isn't the end of it. You see, the King Tier and Emperor Tier crystals were quite similar, and there was only one decent thing that could be made from them, so I had to mix the two crystals while using the leftovers to make something else. This didn't anger Quinn as much. It was upsetting to hear, but by now, he trusted Alex's judgment when it came to forging things. It made sense, considering it took 3 advanced crystals to make his gauntlets. With only one King Tier and one Emperor Tier, he was worried if anything could even be made from them at all. First, let's get all the basic stuff out of the way, Alex said. He revealed all of the advanced gear he had made for him. Advanced tier boots, legs, and shoulders. There were things one could get like accessories and beast clothing, but Alex had said he had already spent all the money. The boots were an overall improvement, giving him a +8 in agility as well as better defense. There was a major change though. It no longer had the active skill Wind Walk, and instead had one called Anti-Gravity. It would allow the users to walk up walls and stay upside down, while their feet would stick to surfaces like a spider. The extra stats were good, and for a sneaking situation, he could imagine they would be better, but there were many times where the extra speed Wind Walk gave him helped him. Wait, it's not really a problem, is it? I have Shadow Equip, Quinn thought. As long as the items were in his dimensional space, he could change into whatever set he wanted. So if he needed to switch boots, he could do it in an instant. This gave him an idea for the future. Sometimes specific armor sets are tailored to one design. Some focused on power, others on speed, and there were even resistance sets. Using shadow equipment at any time, Quinn could switch between his armor sets to face his openers. The major problem with all of this was getting those armor sets in the first place. It was proving difficult just to get one full set of King Tier equipment. Quinn couldn't imagine how many beasts Linda, Blip, and Dennis would have had to fight to get their sets. All of Alex's other gifts lacked an active skill and only improved basic defense. Finally, it was time for the major reveal, but Quinn could already guess what it was, because Alex hadn't given him an advanced tier piece for it. When removing part of the blanket, Quinn could see it, mainly a red chest piece with large-scale pieces, while the area just above the collarbone down to the shoulders was black, with a few wave spikes coming off of it. It was fierce and scary-looking, and Quinn liked it. He liked it a lot. Putting it on, Quinn noticed it was a great fit. He needed one after his last chest piece was destroyed. Now, Quinn was just hoping for some good news from his inspection skills. King Tier chest piece, all stats +10, defense 30. So far so good. It was a huge improvement from his last one, giving all his stats a boost by 10 points. It improved his strength as much as the advanced tier gauntlets. Now he understood why Linda, who was wearing an Emperor tier chest piece, kept up with him speed-wise. If he was to put all her equipment together, she would have quite an impressive number. Finally, Quinn wanted to know the most important part, whether or not it had an active skill. Active skill, rebound damage. Small spikes appear from the piece in all directions. For 5 seconds, 30% of the damage that is done to the user will be reflected to all attackers. Being hit while using the skill will greatly lower the durability. Skill cooldown 30 minutes. The skill sounded great, especially if Quinn had a high defense. On top of this, if he was to be surrounded, it was a good way to trick people into hurting themselves. It would be a good time to test a few things, but the good news didn't stop there. The King Tier armor didn't just have one active skill, but it looked like it had 2. Active skill, Splinter, an optional skill that can be used at the end of Rebond. Once 5 seconds has passed, the user can release the spikes that have been created in all directions. If a skill is used, rebound cooldown time will be doubled. It was an active skill that could be used at the end of the last one. Quinn liked the sound of both of these, and it looked like they gave pretty good defense as well. Considering how it was a large chest piece that had been made, Quinn was guessing this was the main item Alex had made. Still, by mixing the King Tier and Emperor Tier items, he couldn't be upset about a good King Tier item. "Ready for the last one?" Alex asked. Quinn nodded. Removing the blanket as a whole, the last item was a small one, and it was one he didn't expect. The last thing that was left on the table was a small red and black mask, one similar to his own. He didn't know why Alex chose to do something like this. He understood why it needed to be an accessory and smaller if he couldn't make a weapon, but why even bother with the mask? Inspect. Emperor Tier mask. Episode 584, Emperor Tier equipment. Quinn couldn't help but notice how similar the mask's design was to the one Logan had made for him when he first saw it. The main difference was that it was mostly red with a hint of black, as opposed to the old one which was the other way around. Picking it up, Quinn decided to inspect it a bit more. The large, tusk-like fangs on either side made it look like the bottom half of a Japanese Oni mask. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Quinn thought. You're thinking how I know, aren't you? Alex said. That you were the Night Demon back at second base? It looked like Quinn's thoughts were right. Alex had purposely designed the mask after the Night Demon he saw at the base. When you met with me, I tried looking into you, learning about you, and I found out about you being the cursed child, of course, which was how you were choosing to protect me with your name. But when Duke was doing his display, I kept an eye on you, saw you run off, and saw you come back. It could only be you, right? Of course, I can't be 100% sure, but even if I'm not, it's a pretty cool-looking mask, right? Quinn remained silent. He didn't know whether to out himself or not, or just let Alex believe what he wanted to think. It's okay, you don't have to say anything, but from now on I'm just going to talk out loud and address it to the Night Demon. You can choose to listen or not, Alex said. Thank you. The Night Demon doesn't know how much he changed at school, but even I was one of the people affected. I wasn't known for being the best forger or fighter, so I was stuck in the middle, and those guys that worked for Duke were even stealing credits from me. It made it hard for me to buy materials to show my skills and potential, and he, the Night Demon, had changed all of that. Everything that happened at that school. It doesn't matter if he did what he did for selfish reasons. I just want them to know that they changed the lives of many that day, and one of them is standing right here. Quinn couldn't help but feel proud after hearing those words. He only did what he did as a form of personal revenge to start with, and then slowly his mindset changed to wanting to change the world from the way it was. Several times along the way, he wondered if he could make a difference, or if what he was doing was right or wrong. Quinn needed to hear from someone else that he was doing the right thing, and that it had changed their lives to keep going. Let's have a look at this mask, shall we? Quinn said with a smile. Emperor Tier Mask. Effect when worn. The user can choose any stats it wishes and increase it by 5%. Only one stat may be selected at a time. There is a 5-second delay between switches, but the user may switch the boost to any stat they wish. The mask itself didn't have any standard points or defensive points. Still, it was only considered an accessory at the end of the day, rather than a piece of armor. And with that, it was quite impressive, and the best thing about it was that it was a percentage increase, which meant it would scale as Quinn grew as well. But that wasn't the end of it, for the mask seemed to have an active skill. Active skill, Adrenaline Boost. When adrenaline points have reached 100, the points can be used to activate the mask's skill. For 1 hour, a single stat can be boosted by 15%. Once the stat has been selected, adrenaline points will drop to 0. The user cannot switch between boosting stats while in adrenaline mode. Adrenaline will not be restored while using the active skill. Quinn's thoughts were more along these lines when he heard the name Emperor Tier Equipment. It definitely deserved its name. 15% was quite a significant increase. It was no wonder Linda could match up to his speed and strength when using her equipment. Now, thinking about such things, Quinn was starting to wonder what Demon Tier equipment would do. It was certainly better than any ability. The only thing Quinn was unsure about was the adrenaline bar the mask talked off. Equipping it onto his face, he could now see under it his HP, MC, and now there was also an adrenaline bar. The question was how one would fill it up and how long would it take. The description didn't really help. It just said during a fight it would naturally fill up, but depending on how easy or hard it was to fill up the bar, it would decide how good this mask was. After learning of everything, he couldn't help but thank Alex once again for this. You did a really good job, Quinn said. Let me return the favor to you. You said you wanted to get off this place and stop hunting. Then come with me. Huh? Alex said, confused by the proposal. I mean, yeah, of course. You're not talking about now, are you? Yeah, I am, Quinn said. There's no other reason for me to stay here, so why don't you come with me? A certain leader of this place owes me a favor, and I was thinking of using it. I'm sure the crows won't mind an extra member, right? Quinn said, looking back at Linda. Are you serious? Of course I'll come. Let me just get my things, Alex said, feeling more excited than ever. Linda looked at him, wondering if Quinn had planned everything out, or if things were just going his way for him. Nevertheless, this was going to be a little headache she would have to explain to Blip when they got back. The first thing they did was head to the apartment Alex was staying at. He had quite a few things, like blueprint designs and equipment. Surely it would take a few hours to pack things, but there was a shortcut for Quinn. Everything was placed in his dimensional void, and when they arrived at the crow's base, they could take it out again. At that moment, Quinn had also placed the mask and the chest piece in the dimensional spaces away from the eyes of their pursuers. The mask wasn't exactly something he wanted to wear around all the time, especially due to how similar it looked to his old one. He couldn't be wearing it anytime soon around the crows. Finally, with everything ready, the three of them headed back to the Eagle's base one last time to pull in the favor that Quinn had earned only yesterday. However, on their way there, Quinn noticed that the two people who were following him were now following them closer than ever. "Hey, are those guys following us?" Alex whispered. It seemed they were now being so obvious about it that even Alex had caught on. "Let's just carry on," Quinn said, leading the way. He started to change course, and they were no longer heading for the base like they originally were. Instead, Quinn began to head to a quieter part of the shelter. Then he started to enter a darker place until they were in what could only be described as an alleyway. "So, you knew we were following you," one of the men said. "Not that it matters, because we were going to meet you like this anyway." There was one Greylash member on one side of the alleyway and one on the other. "The Greylash family would like to personally thank you for teaching our students the other day a lesson. Would you mind showing us adults one or two things as well?" "The Greylash family, Quinn? What the hell did you do to annoy them?" Alex said. "Have things gotten so bad that when someone is doing a crime or something bad, they can just announce their name like that? Is it because you know nobody is going to complain or touch you guys?" Quinn said. These two members were a little different from the students that were at the Eagle's base. The leader there was still stronger than these two, but they seemed to be a slight upgrade from the students Quinn had faced earlier. "Linda, why don't you take on the one behind us, and don't hold back. Test your new body," Quinn said. Linda nodded. She was getting annoyed with these guys, and it looked like they were going to beat them up anyway. No matter what family they belonged to, Linda wasn't the type of person that would just allow that to happen. "Looks like it's experiment day, and you guys are the perfect ones to experiment on." With his hand behind, Quinn grabbed the mask from his dimensional space and proceeded to put it on. And right in front of him, this person would be the perfect dummy to test out his new equipment, and maybe he could find out what adrenaline really was. Episode 585, The Untouchable. The Greylash members had no clue who they were going against. They only knew about Quinn based on how he had performed at the Eagle's base. As for Linda, she was an unknown variable, but the leader had come to a simple conclusion. If she hadn't joined in yesterday's fight after what had happened to the Eagle's boss, then she was simply a nobody. But that was a mistake and a half. The Greylash family member struck lightning out towards her chest, aiming for the heart-like area. It was a unique technique they would use. It would paralyze the heart, temporarily stopping all movements if aimed at the right place. The leader hadn't used it against Dennis because he knew it would be useless based on the armor he was wearing. And unfortunately for the Greylash family member, it was the same thing here. The spark was less than a tickle to Linda, and she wasn't quite sure if it was her Emperor tier chest piece or her dulled new body. She moved in fast and was able to catch up with the Greylash family member. She didn't get any extra speed from turning, but it wasn't needed either. She was already fast, thanks to all her beast gear. The man this time had quickly pulled out a beast armor shield at the advanced level. He held on tighter and infused his lightning abilities into it. If an opponent were to attack and hit the shield, not only would it block the attack, but it would hurt the person hitting it as well. Seeing this didn't slow Linda down, and not holding back just like Quinn had said, she used all her strength to deliver a devastating punch. There was no resistance, no give at all, as the shield cracked into 100 pieces. The man was sent flying out of the alleyway and onto the street. He would be lucky if he was still alive. Man, talk about super strength, Quinn thought, looking at such a thing. He knew the man wasn't dead, but Quinn had gained a nice bit of EXP thanks to Linda's defeating her opponent so quickly. As for Quinn, he was busy avoiding the punches thrown by the man in front of him. Right now, he had his advanced tier boots on, giving him extra agility points. At the same time, he had set the mask on his face to increase his agility even further. His reason for not attacking was to see if the adrenaline bar would increase without Quinn doing much, but it seemed like it did nothing after a while. Quinn finally threw a hit while also using the phantom punch, holding back his strength. It had hit the man exactly as before, and for the first time, it had increased. 5 of 100 adrenaline points. Quinn decided to do the same again, but this time he added a little more strength to the hit. 15 of 100. What is with this kid? Is he hitting me 2 places at once? The man thought. He then thought back to what the leader had said, and that he might have been using an illusion ability. The man was arrogant, thinking he would never be affected, but it looked like he was. Using his lightning to speed up his movements, he blocked the punches coming from both places this time, concentrating as hard as he could. But it didn't matter.
Not yet.
For the third hit, Quinn had decided to use even more strength than the last one, sending him hurling to the floor. 25 of 100. He had gotten some results from his experiment. He received 5 adrenaline points for a normal hit and 10 for a strong hit. A strong hit was anything above 60% of his power. He wasn't wearing the gauntlets, so he wasn't doing nearly as much damage as he normally would. Even if he increased his strength further to 80%, as he had done with the last hit, it looked like the system would still only give him 10 adrenaline points. "I'm sorry, not so sorry about this," Quinn said as he looked at the man on the floor. In rapid succession, Quinn threw a flurry of weak punches at the man. Finally, he had reached 100 adrenaline points. The only unfortunate thing was that the Greylash member was already knocked out. Still, Quinn activated the skills, and he placed them into his agility. That's when he noticed that the 15% increase was based on his base stat points and didn't include his points with his equipment and armor. Still, it was powerful, and Quinn could feel the difference. For a second, Quinn looked at the 2 Greylash family members, thinking about what to do with them, but he felt it was best to just leave them. There was no need to anger them further. Leaving the 2 of them passed out, the 3 decided to head to the base as initially planned, and they arrived in Richard's room to make the request. "So, you want to take this little forger back to the Crows with you, huh?" Dennis said, rubbing his slightly scruffy beard. "Well, I did say I would do you a favor, but do you really want to use it up like this? I mean, according to our files, this guy is still an F rank." It seemed Dennis was someone who only had an appreciation for people who were good with their fists, a straightforward man. "I'm sure," Quinn said. "All right, I can put in the transfer request as long as Linda approves it. It should all be okay," Dennis said with a thumbs up. Everything was going smoothly until a certain man barged in through the door. "What the hell did you do to my 2 men?" the leader asked. His face was red with anger, and his fist was shaking. "It was self-defense. You were the one who ordered them to attack us, didn't you?" Quinn said. "They just wanted to take you in to see me. I wanted to know whether or not we could have our sparring match from earlier. According to them, you suddenly attacked them out of nowhere." The leader knew this wasn't true, but if it was his word against this, then who would anyone believe? They were the Greylash family at the top of the food chain. "It is my word against theirs since there is no one to prove anything. What can you do?" Quinn said. The leader looked at the 3 of them. From the reports, he knew the 3 were traveling together before the 2 were attacked. Out of the 3 of them, he saw the weakest-looking person. If he could threaten him to testify against them, then there was no stopping what he could do to these guys. You saw him attack them, didn't you?" the leader said as he went to grab Alex. But before he could even reach him, a shadow appeared from underneath Alex's feet, stopping the hand. Quinn quickly pulled Alex behind him. Quinn didn't want the leader to gain an advantage by grabbing one of his men or possibly using Alex as a hostage. Back in the alleyway, Quinn had used his shadow-on skill on him to protect him at all times, just in case there were more or Alex was in danger. Then, when he saw the hand come out, he activated the shadow to protect Alex without thinking. Protecting those close to him was not a lot more important than keeping a secret. "This is the shadow, the one the leader told us to stay away from. Even during the Civil War, he made it a point that if anyone was to see a user with the shadow, we should leave him alone." Not wanting to get on his own leader's bad side, the leader immediately changed his attitude. He quickly got to his knees and started bowing down to Quinn, begging for forgiveness. "I'm sorry, you're right. It was my fault. I'm sorry. If there's anything you need, please." Everyone in the room was confused by the sudden actions, and that included Quinn. "Please, just don't report this to the Greylash head. I'll do anything," he said. "Boy, who the hell are you?" Dennis asked. And Alex and the others were starting to think the same thing. This time it wasn't through any of Quinn's actions, and he wanted to ask the leader himself what was going on, but before he could, bang! The entire base vibrated as they all heard a massive explosion outside, but it wasn't just one. Following the first explosion, several more were heard. "What the hell is going on?" Dennis exclaimed. They dashed out of the room and into the hallway, where they could see the Eagle members all panicking. They kept running until they reached the open air. In the sky, they could see several different ships firing lasers at the shelter, destroying building after building, people crying and screaming, panicking. Then out from one of the larger ships, people could be seen coming out of them. "They're here, and so soon," the leader said. From one of the spaceships, the Greylash family members around the shelter started to engage with them. A force battle between fire and lightning had started. One of the big 3, the Sunshield family, was attacking. Episode 586, The Sun Shield's Attack. Explosions, screams, and vibrations continued to be heard throughout the shelter as the chaos continued. The sound of 2,000 people running around, screaming in confusion. Most of the damage that was being done to the place was done by the spaceships. They would fire off energy blasts. These energy blasts worked on the same concept as Logan's suit. It would completely disintegrate crystals using their energy to fire off lasers. Anything above an intermediate crystal being used would be costly and hard to come by, and if a traveler was hit by such a thing, they could deal with it using their ability or would have armor good enough to block it. Still, it was good enough to hurt those that were non-fighters, as well as the buildings and structures that had been put in place. Those who weren't dealt with by the spaceships were dealt with by others. They could finally see who was behind everything. A team of around 20 dropped down from one of the larger ships, wearing a dark red armor led by a platoon leader. There was no hesitation in their actions as they started to use their fire abilities to burn down everything in their path. 5 members of the Grey Lash family tried to engage with them. A fierce battle was beginning to take place, but the enemy had numbers on their side. In total, there were 50 or so Grey Lash members. However, it looked as if the Sun Shield family had brought double. There were 5 large spaceships in the shelter, and extending from each of them was a team of 20, led by a single platoon leader. They were organized and effective while the Grey Lashes were spread thin, and their leader was in the center of it all by Quinn's side and the others. "They brought more people than we thought they would," the leader said, "and they came far earlier than we thought." "You knew about this?" Dennis shouted, grabbing the leader by the collar. "Why didn't you say anything? We could have prepared something or warned the people at least." "Now isn't the time to be fighting. We have to try and get as many people out of here as possible," Linda said. Running out of the base, the old man who had first escorted them had arrived. "Boss, Dennis," he said. "All the spaceships that were in the hold have been destroyed. The whole place is on fire. Our ships that were surveying the planets, we could no longer get into contact with any of them." It was clear they already had information about the shelter's layout, how many men they had, and more. The Eagles totaled around 300 members, most of those being F to D rank travelers. With 100 Sun Shield elites as strong as the Grey Lash family, no matter what they tried, deep down, Dennis knew this was a fight they couldn't win. They were prepared and too organized while they knew nothing. "Tell everyone to head to the teleporting station, and tell the members of the Eagles to protect that place with their lives. Whatever planet they hop to, it doesn't matter. We only have those under the protection of the Grey Lash family anyway. The main goal is to save as many people as possible." One of the ships could be seen hovering just above the base at the time. For a few seconds, it hovered in front of them, and then light could be seen gathering in front of its 2 blasters. Quickly transforming and opening up his large wings, Dennis encased them all as the blast hit them. The beam had hit, destroying a part of the base behind them. Debris fell on top and dust rose. Then, lifting open his wings, rubble was thrown into the air, and everyone was safe without a scratch on them thanks to Dennis. But the base behind them was reduced to mostly rubble. The ship was a little distance away in the air. It was hard for them to reach with their attacks. Only Dennis could fly over, but he was afraid that if he did, then the others would be unprotected from the blasts. The old man wasn't much of a fighter, along with the Forger. The Lightning User's attack would never reach that far either. That's when Quinn stepped out in front of them all. He started to think of words in his head, activating his system skills one by one. "Shadow equip." A shadow formed around Quinn's body, putting on the newly formed gear that had been given to him by Alex. The mask surrounded his face. "Strength 52. His original strength was over 50, but thanks to the mask he acquired, a 5% increase brought him to 55. Then the advanced tier gauntlets around him gave him an extra 10, and finally his new king tier chest piece gave him an extra 4 extra stat points. Strength 72. A few odd bits of armor here and there also gave him extra points, and all in all, his strength had significantly increased compared to what it was before. The ship started to charge up its weapons once more as the light particles could be seen, but Quinn wasn't going to let it attack again. He too had a far-range attack. People's lives were in danger, including the lives of his friends and comrades behind him, and there was an enemy in front of him. He crouched down slightly and gathered ki in his leg before throwing 2 kicks as quickly as he could. Blood Crescent kick. The kicks were performed so fast that the others could barely see them, and out from his legs, 2 large lines of red curved blades came out. It didn't take long for them to reach the ship, and when they did, the attack hit it like an axe. It sliced through the ship, and pieces started to fall to the ground. As it crashed, an explosion occurred, and the system message opened up, confirming there were 2 people on board who had died. He had gained EXP from them. Perhaps the old Quinn would have felt sorry for them, but Paul's words rang through his head. This was war, and if he wanted to change the world, he needed to be prepared to do at least this much. Just seconds ago, they had attempted to end his and others' lives with no hesitation, so why should he worry about theirs? So strong, Alex said, watching Quinn's back. And all of them standing there could agree. Is this why our boss didn't want us to touch him? Is this the power of the blades? Let's go, Quinn said. The group started to run through the shelters, gathering as many people as they could on their way. Unfortunately, in this type of situation, if there were any that were injured or unable to move, they would have to be left behind, including those in the Grey Lash family. They were able to run through the shelter without much difficulty because they engaged with the majority of the Sun Shield members. Their primary concern was dealing with the small airships that were shooting at them from all directions. Dennis flew high into the sky with his large wings, signaling to all Eagle members and citizens where they should go. There was fighting going on at the teleporting station, which he could see. They needed to hurry before the attackers destroyed that as well. While running to the teleporters, blasts from ships would strike close to them. On the way, Quinn would use his shadow to block these attacks from hitting the people, and then, using his blood skills, he would attack them from a long distance. He had destroyed ship after ship, and he wasn't slowing down at all. If it weren't for him, many of them would have died already. Seeing everything Quinn was doing, Dennis owed this strange young man he had only just met nearly everything. Finally, they had reached their destination, and the strongest members of the Eagles were dealing with a squad of 20 members of the Sun Shield family. They had managed to kill a couple, but the deaths on their side were many. It was hard to stand there and just watch, as the heat emanating from their abilities was too much. "Boss! Boss!" a lot of the Eagles cried out when they heard his name. In an instant, he had engaged in battle, evening out the sides, hitting the men and protecting them. "Quinn, Linda, I know this is a lot for me to ask, but make sure those people get somewhere safe," Dennis shouted. They didn't need to be asked. They were already planning it. While the fighting was happening outside, the others had managed to get indoors. Most of the teleporters had already been destroyed, burnt, or hit by the destroyed building's rubble. It looked like there was only one left working. It was no wonder those outside were fighting for their lives. It was their only way out. The people that had gathered with them went through the portal quickly as Quinn and the others hurried them in. "You guys should go as well," the old man said. "But everyone else, Dennis?" Linda replied. "This is our faction, not yours, and who knows? They might have also attacked the crows at the same time. This portal doesn't lead to your planet, but you will be able to get back to yours with no trouble as long as they haven't attacked other places." Linda didn't want to leave, but he was right. Her mind wandered to the crows, her brother, and her family. It was the same for Quinn. Fex was at the other base with those who were important to him. There appeared to be only a small handful of people left when they looked around. "We'll go after these go in," Linda said, and Quinn didn't disagree. However, another explosion came from outside, one bigger than the others. One side of the wall had been destroyed, hurling parts of rubble and brick at them. Quinn had managed to protect himself and Alex, and Linda was able to stand her ground. "Hey, old man, wake up," the Grey Lash leader said. When the others came over, they could see it was pointless. Half his body from the waist down had been ripped off. In all honesty, Quinn looked at him, and he probably could have saved him, now like he did Linda, by turning him, but he had no desire to. Just like Kaz and the others had said, turning everyone he could was not the solution to save everybody. They looked up at the teleporter, only to see the last one left had been destroyed. Dennis was hurled through the broken wall at that precise moment, hurt and burned in several places. Outside, all the men had died, and 10 Sun Shield family members walked in. Episode 587, Don't Attack the Blade Family. The building the group was standing in could hardly be called a building anymore. If one were to look at it, one would never guess it was originally 2 floors. Most of the walls had crumbled, and the roof had been completely blown away, allowing sunlight to pour down on them. The wall had vanished completely on one side. They could see 10 Sun Shield family members approaching them when they looked out from where the wall used to be. Half of their squad had been defeated, but as for the Eagle members that were protecting the place, all of them had died, and even Dennis looked beat. Linda helped him get to his feet as his wings started to retract into himself. He had fought with all he had using his soul weapon and managed to defeat many, but the soul weapon had used up all of his MC points. At this point, other than the physical strength and equipment he had on him, he was out of the fight. The others stood up waiting for an attack, while Alex remained by the old man's side. He was still on his last breath, and at least Alex could be there for him when he passed on. There wasn't much he could do to aid in the fight in the first place. "My apartment," the old man said. "Inside, there is a portable—" But before he could finish, the old man was no longer. However, both Quinn, who could hear him from a distance, and Alex knew what he was trying to say. There was something in the old man's apartment, a portable teleporter, and maybe their only hope of getting out of here. But now standing in their way were 10 men. The Grey Lash leader looked at Dennis. He was beaten, and then there were only Quinn and Linda left to fight. This fight was over. One of the Sun Shields dashed forward towards Dennis, hoping to finish him off. Still out of his side, he could see someone moving towards him. He drew out his blades and activated his ability to coat them in fire, swinging them towards the man. However, a strange shadow had encased the fire, stopping it, and the next thing he knew, he was sent flying with a punch that contained all of Quinn's power. The fire ability was unique compared to the other elements. Water, earth, and lightning could all be formed naturally, and they seemed to appear out of thin air at times. Their fire ability, on the other hand, came from within them, as if their bodies were made of fire. This meant nearly all fire users were close-range fighters, as they couldn't shoot out fireballs and things like that. Seeing their member not get up from the floor, the Sunshield family members had paused. "That's right, the young Shadow Boy. If we got those orders, I'm sure they did too," the Grey Lash leader said as he ran out in front of Quinn. "Stop!" the Grey Lash family leader said. "As you can see, this boy wields the shadow power. I'm sure of it. If the Grey Lash family got orders to not harm him, then the Sunshields did too." Quinn could hear everything that was being said, and now he was even more confused. He had someone order them not to touch him, but why would they do that? Was it something to do with the vampires? Honestly, Quinn was just happy that the Sunshields were hesitating for some reason. When Quinn used his inspection skill on the man in front, the instant level up quest had appeared. It meant this person was strong. Not only that, but Quinn had already used a considerable amount of his MC points, blocking the shots from the spaceships and protecting the people. If there was a tough battle ahead of him, he wouldn't be able to hold back, and even if they did win, there were 4 more squads like this one. Fighting was a foolish option to choose. The best choice was to run. "Ah, yes," the Sunshield squad leader said. "The order from the Blades is to not touch the Shadow Boy, right? Well, of course we did, but are you Grey Lashes genuinely idiots? Why would we follow that now? The war has already begun, and if we're going to get rid of you, we'll have to get rid of them as well. Besides, it's clear by this boy's ability that he isn't one of the Blades himself. He is only under their protection. If we get rid of him here, how long until they find out? How would they even find out?" The man started to chuckle. A certain word in particular had stuck out to Quinn. The Blades. Did this have something to do with them? The Blades were Vorden's family name, but things weren't making a lot of sense. Why would the Big Three not attack him because of them? Wasn't Vorden's family just an original family? But Quinn didn't have much time to think, as the Sunshield family's arms and legs covered themselves in fire, ready for a fight. Quinn quickly placed his hand on the floor. "Shadow travel." From his fingertips, the floor and area around them started to be covered in a shadow until it had finally reached all members of Quinn's group. They felt themselves sinking in. Suddenly, they were all in his dark space, and when they looked up, they could see the building they were in just seconds ago. Back on the surface, the dark shadow circle remained, and it started to move along the floor, moving through everything. The Sunshields, seeing this, tried to attack it, but Quinn had dodged and moved. This was another one of the new shadow skills Quinn had learned. Arthur had used it to transport them to the 14th castle once. However, Quinn quickly realized that shadow travel took up his MC points. If he was to use it for a howl, then he wouldn't be able to use it for a fight. Maybe for someone like Arthur, who had a large amount of MC, it was fine, but it would be a struggle for Quinn, especially depending on how many people were in it as well. "Quinn, you saved us," Alex said, but Quinn's face was sweating as he was struggling to keep it up. Dennis, tell us where the old man's apartment is, quick." With Dennis guiding the way, Quinn was able to control the shadow and started to head in the right direction. Above, the others could see the fight in many parts still going on. Most of the citizens either escaped or were dead. There were now only a few of the Eagles as well as the Grey Lash people fighting. Finally, they had arrived at the apartment building, which was partially destroyed but was in good condition compared to the rest of the shelter. It was like what Dennis had thought. They had information on all the important locations. They knew which areas to attack first, which is why this normal apartment building was mostly unharmed. Breaking down the door and entering the room, It didn't take them long to find the portable teleporter the old man was talking about. It was placed on the ground and opened up. Where it went, who knew, but at least supposedly it would be safer than where they were. "Wait," Alex said. "Do any of us have the explosion thingy? Do you know what they used to destroy the teleporter once we went through? If not, won't they just find us wherever we are? They'll know we escaped." It was true, but they couldn't imagine them going through the teleporter to attack another planet again, would they? Still, it would cause unnecessary harm to whatever planet they were going to. "Don't you guys worry about that," Dennis said, standing up straight. "I'm staying behind anyway. There are still some members of the Eagles left here. I need to protect them." "I know how you feel, but you can't defeat all of the members on your own. You can't even transform at the moment. You would just be... Live to fight another day," Linda said. But Dennis shook his head. "I've already decided." A loud bang was heard again. The whole building started to vibrate, and it wasn't long until they heard another. Looking out of the window, the Grey Lash leader could see that they were using the ships to destroy building after building. A team would search for it beforehand, and then it would be blown to pieces. He looked outside, and then he looked at all the others behind him. They were all standing by the teleporter ready to go in. He walked over slowly to them, with his head down, and then, stomping his foot on the ground and making a fist of lightning, he punched Dennis right in the stomach. The force was strong, and sent him across and into the teleporter. "All of you go," the Grey Lash leader said. "That idiot would have never left if I hadn't done that. You have people to protect, and I have my people here too." Unlike Dennis, the others didn't have much attachment and started to go through the teleporter one by one until Quinn was left. As he partially stepped through the teleporter, he turned to say thank you, but the Grey Lash leader said one last thing. "Boy," the leader said, "if you know the Blades well enough, then maybe you can find them and stop this war." These were the last words Quinn heard before he teleported to a new land. Episode 588, The Lone Worker. Out somewhere in an unknown area, in uncharted territory, a top-of-the-line spaceship could be seen floating in place. One would think there would be a top-level, highly coordinated crew on board, but left to protect the large ship that could house around 2,000 or so soldiers was a single man, or a single young adult called Peter. It had been a while now since the others had left him to take care of the ship, and he could safely say there were no problems, at least with the ship itself, for there was no one large problem with it. It was the fact that he was bored. There were a few reasons why Peter had been selected as the perfect candidate. The main reason was that he never needed to sleep. If there was ever an enemy coming at any time of the day, he would be able to tell. His ability to absorb and repay knowledge quickly was another point. Everything when Logan needed to tell him about the controls of the ship. It had sunken in and only needed to be said once. He had received no contact on the ship from any of his teammates. That included Quinn, but he wasn't too worried. At one point, Peter could feel himself getting stronger, which meant Quinn was getting stronger as well. However, there was one thing that Peter could do to pass the time while on the ship, and that was to play the VR game, Power Fighters. There was a gaming room on board the ship that had a few VR capsules for them to play in. At first, Peter had steered away from playing the game, taking his duty seriously. But during his time on the ship, he didn't see anything happening. Not a single interesting thing occurred. It turns out that space is pretty boring once you get past all the pretty sights, especially the part they were in right now. The large ship was partly still in the Milky Way solar system, and they were far out of the path that one would have to take to head to the warp stations. The warp stations were practically large teleporters that humans used to move their ships. There were 4 in total, spread far apart from each other, each owned by the big family and the military, with True Dream sharing one of them. This was because the beast planets weren't located in the same solar system as the one on Earth. Although the warp station was no longer heavily manned or controlled by the military or families like it used to be, just like the Earth stations. This large and powerful-looking ship would have attracted a lot of attention, which was why they had chosen to use the smaller ships to arrive at the Crow's base. So the area that the large ship and Peter were in was a dead space located in the Grey Lash family area, but there were no planets nearby or anything. In the end, he gave in to his temptation and started to play the VR game once more. He wasn't just planning on playing the game, but also improving his skills. He realized that when he went to the vampire world, he couldn't rely on his strength and healing ability. There were plenty of vampires who already had that. The place where he lacked was fighting skills. But there was no Edward to teach him here, so the only thing he could do was watch the skills people used in the game and try to imitate them. When he looked around, he quickly realized what was wrong. He would only be able to face opponents ranked F to D if he didn't have a Traveler ID. Regardless, he would play the game. His opponents were less than impressive. Most of them were slow and didn't really help Peter learn anything. Still, it was the only thing he could do. His 1 hour soon became 2, which soon became 3, and among the low ranks, he was making a name for himself again. Zombie P, he just beats up everyone with his fists. The game says he doesn't even have any beast armor attachments. How is he so strong? Strength ability, maybe? Nah, I've seen his username before when I was in the military. This guy can heal really fast. That's why he's called Zombie P. A few opponents had injured him and had gotten to witness this, but they still couldn't figure out how he was beating people so easily. With each match he played, he would get an invitation asking him to join their faction. He would ignore it and continue to play the game. This time, though, when Peter logged out from the game and headed to the main command center, he could see one of the screens flashing red. Damn, did something happen while I was playing the game? He rushed over to what looked like a radar screen. The sensors on the ship had picked up something. Display image, Peter said. The center section of the glass screen that would usually show the outside space changed, showing an image of a small ship that was approaching them. Now this is a little more interesting. Quinn did say if I couldn't deal with it, then I shouldn't. This should be enough, right? The controller Logan had given him was more like a touchscreen tablet with tabs. Each one, when clicked on and selected, would control a different part of the ship. Searching with his eyes, he finally saw it, the tab for the ship's weapons. Inside the small spaceship, there were military personnel, a team of 4 to be exact. Originally, 2 ships were tailing the larger ship when it had left for the Earth. At first, they had both left to report, but the commander asked for one of them to stay and keep an eye, but to leave immediately if they saw any other ships approaching the larger one. Oscar, the Supreme Commander, was afraid that the ship now belonged to the Grey Lashes and that the whole thing was a trap if the military tried to get it back. After watching for a long time, they saw no one approach it and only a small ship left towards the warp station. So much time had passed by and there was nothing. In the end, the ship decided to tempt fate. They made the ships so they knew the raiders' range. The soldiers' hearts were beating fast, and when they finally entered the area, there was no reaction. They breathed a sigh of relief. They tried making contact with the large ship as the commander asked, but there was no answer or anything. It was all too strange, so they decided to investigate. Halfway on their way, that was when they realized their mistake. The ship had made its first movements. Out from the bottom, a circle head had come out, and with it for cannons. Now that the ship had been seen, Peter couldn't let them get away. The particles surrounded the cannon, and the small ship tried to move away, but it was too late. As the bright white beam left the cannons, the attack was too wide for them to avoid. It had hit the ship, destroying most of it and everything that was inside. Error! Error! Please refill the cannon with advanced tier crystals, the spaceship spoke. Right now, they didn't have any advanced tier crystals. The only ones that were on board were bags and bags of the small blue ones that were used to maintain the ship. Once a week, a bag of the crystals had to be dumped into a special area shown by Logan. Peter started to scratch his head now, wondering if blasting them was such a good idea. It looked like if more trouble was to come, then Peter could no longer use the cannon, which would bring them more trouble. Hopefully the others will have returned by then, Peter thought. His routine was once again boring, and he had expected something to happen quite soon after destroying the ships, but still there was nothing. Peter paused for a second. Fighting these types of people was wasting his time, and the last time he had entered the ship nearly suffered an attack. So before entering, he went back and returned with some beast gear. It was a pair of basic tier tonfa. A tonfa was a device similar to a baton, a blunt object, but there would be a side handle, allowing a part of it to be used as a support. Rather than swinging around like a baton, it felt more natural in one's hands. These were gifts from Logan. There were many weapons Logan had tried a while ago when he first worked with Peter in the game, and this item had suited him greatly. If he could get skilled at using these and then make a beast weapon, it would increase his power. Just as Peter was about to get in, a message was received on the ship. For the first time in the game's history, Peter was going to have human interaction. Play message! Hey Peter, it's Logan. I've sorted out what I wanted to sort out on my end, so I've started digging into the Bree family. It looks like there may soon be a chance for us all to meet again. Something big is going to happen, and soon, Logan said. Episode 589, An Unknown Family. On planet Jokingly, it was just another midday. Nothing unusual had happened. The faction stationed there was going about their business as usual, with people coming and going and completing quests. The faction would then receive the rewards. Inside their main base in the teleporter room, they weren't expecting any visitors today. Because of the high tension that was going on, if one were to use a teleporter to travel to another planet, they would first inform someone beforehand, even if they were in the same family. It was also so the Greylash could keep track of numbers and who was where. That's why when a portal rift suddenly opened inside their portal room, all the guards that were there that day were on high alert. They saw a man come flying out of the portal and land on the ground seconds after it was opened. 4 men immediately went to surround him, while the other 6 carried on waiting by the teleporter in case there were others to come through as well. "The man looks injured," one of them said. "There are burn marks all over him." The man made a few groans but didn't say much else, and when he finally passed out, 3 more people came through the teleporter shortly after him. When Quinn saw the guards, he immediately raised his hands. He didn't want to get into a fight right now, so he used his inspection skills to make sure they weren't from the Greylash or Sunshield families, which was a relief. "It looks like this place at least hasn't been attacked," Quinn thought. They were safe, for now. The group was taken away for questioning and then told to stay at the base while being looked over. In the meantime, they would try to confirm if what they had said was true or not. They didn't lie about what happened. They had no reason to, and they were sure it would get whoever was in charge's attention. It had been a tense few moments, but nothing compared to what they'd all been through. However, as soon as Dennis regained consciousness, their treatment seemed to change. Dennis recognized the planet they were on and the faction known as the Underdogs. This was all because of the old man, who used to be a member of this faction before joining the Eagles. Their relationship was close. After hearing what Dennis had to say and confirming that they could indeed no longer get in contact or connect with the systems at their faction, he had to believe what they were saying was true. All they needed to do now was wait for confirmation from the Greylash family. The man in charge of the Underdogs, named Korg, was the leader and a compassionate man. He said they could stay at this shelter for as long as they wished, or use the teleporters to return to the Crows. Their story was devastating to hear, and he could tell they had been through a lot. Through it all, before leaving the base, Dennis had made one request. "Korg, if you could do me a favor in your report, could you perhaps not tell them we survived? The Greylashes. I want to see what they are going to do about this first before deciding everything." As a leader, Korg understood what he was trying to do. When they left the base, they entered the shelter, and this one, in particular, was set out and designed differently from the ones they had been to before. The shops and houses were appropriately built instead of temporary, having personal designs for each place. Potted plants were seen placed outside homes and stone walkways. If anything, it didn't feel like a temporary shelter, or a shelter at all, but looked more like an old equine city. This was because this was classified as a Tier 1 shelter. It was one of the bigger factions under the Greylash family. They could tell immediately due to the number of Greylashes inside the facility. They'd even built a base that was placed near the main faction base. A big faction meant they obtained a lot of resources from a place like this, so it needed protection. The group eventually decided to head to a coffee shop and sat outside on a nice day. They needed to talk before deciding what to do next. As they sipped their drinks, they looked at the peaceful buildings and the people's smiling faces. Dennis continued to shake his head. "They're all gone, aren't they? All of them." "We will pay them back," Linda said. "For now, we have to figure out what we're going to do." According to Korg, they had directly received a large influx of people from the Greylash family, nothing compared to the small number of men that were sent to the Eagles. It seemed that somehow they knew that the Sunshield family was planning an attack. But they chose to send the most men to the most important places. However, it appeared that the Eagles were the only base that had been attacked so far, as Korg was able to communicate with every other base, except theirs. "I think the Greylashes have given up on the smaller-sized factions," Alex finally said. "If you think about it, they can't spread themselves too thin, otherwise it leaves their home planet vulnerable to attack. You can see how many men were sent here, and how many were at the Eagles. You heard what the Greylash squad leader said. He never expected them to come so soon. Maybe they were meant to just scout out the place, and then head back home. If they knew an attack would happen and they were planning to stop it, they would have sent more people. Even now, after an attack, they haven't chosen to inform the other factions to keep their guard up, and it doesn't appear that any Greylash members have been sent to the Crow's place either. It's as if they have decided that these planets are already at a loss, and for the time being, they will happily accept the benefits, but not the responsibility and risk their own people's lives. This whole situation is a load of crap. A lot of them thought of this possibility, but hearing Alex say it out loud brought it home for them. That's probably why they have been pushing all the medium factions to gather crystals harder. If we get them all before the Sun Shields even attack, then what does it matter? Hearing all of this, Quinn thought it was finally time. The Sun Shield family will come and attack the Crows. If they started with the Eagles, they will continue with the others. The Grey Lashes won't help, so I see no reason why you should ally yourselves with them anymore. This offer is to the both of you and all the Crows, Quinn said, looking at Linda. In a way, Linda had no choice but to agree to what he was about to suggest, but he wanted Blip and the others on his side as well. On the surface, you appear to still be working with the Crows, but you will no longer be with them. You'll be with me instead. Look, I don't know who you are, and I owe you a lot, Dennis said. I agree we're on our own, but if the Sun Shields come to attack and we can't fend them off, then where do we go? We were only able to go here because we are with the Grey Lashes under their banner. All of the planets are owned by one of the big three, and the Earth is mostly covered by the military. There are some undiscovered places, but if we stay there, we will be in the middle of a war zone constantly. Linda, do you remember Paul? Quinn said. Paul is under me, and he used to be the head general of Military Base 2. We, stole one of the large ships that can house around 2,000 people. For now, this is enough to accommodate all of the Crow members. It's a temporary solution, but good enough while we build our power. Dennis, you aren't the only faction that feels distant with the head families. There are a lot of you, and I have more people on my side in more places than you think. What I suggest is that we prepare for the Sun Shield family coming to the Crow's base. We set up teleporters between the large spaceship and the home planet. When they come, the civilians can move over, and we will have our last stand without worrying about them. Usually, Dennis would say someone so young-looking was crazy to even suggest such things, but there was something strange about him. The Greylash Squad family leader's attitude changed after learning of his ability. The Sun Shield seemed to have known him as well. Then they learned that he has an ex-second general under him. Last of all his powers, Dennis could admit he was strangely strong. I already said I owe you, Dennis replied. Even if your crazy plan doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. I just want you to give me a chance to give payback to the Sun Shield family, and I can't really forgive the Grey Lashes either for not letting us know beforehand. That was one person on board and a strong ally to the team. Then Quinn looked toward Linda for an answer as well. I agree with what you said, but we will have to convince Blip. I don't think it will be a problem. Of late, he has been complaining about the Grey Lashes more and more, and if he learns of everything that happened, it shouldn't be too difficult. I trust you, Quinn said. The near-death experience had brought these people closer together. If the Crows agreed to join and they could stop the planet from being taken over, they would have a beast planet to hunt on and be able to use the ship as a base of operations. The faction was slowly coming together. But more than anything, there was one critical thought on Quinn's mind. It was the Greylash Squad leader's last words. Was it true that the Blade family could stop this? And was it the same Blade that Vorden belonged to? Quinn had questions, and he was hoping he could find answers. Have any of you ever heard of the Blade family? Quinn asked. They thought about it for a while, but it didn't ring any bells for anyone. Apart from what those two were saying before, I've never heard of them, Dennis replied. It seemed like Quinn would soon need to contact Vorden. Episode 590, Once a Month. Back at the Crow shelter, people were still feeling the effects of the big hunt, but they knew they would need to get back to their usual routine soon. There were, however, still effects due to what had happened. People were now taking fewer risks in their quests, taking lower-level ones less frequently. It was a grim reminder to the travelers that in the end, they valued their lives more than any ranking system or rewards from the Greylash family. Blip, their leader, understood this more than anyone. Behind the scenes, the Greylash family was actually getting frustrated with him. Suddenly, the number of crystals he was delivering to them plummeted after the event. They seemed to be pressuring him every day and were uncaring about his people. Did you not just hear me? A man died. It's normal for production to go down after such a thing, Blip said with frustration in his voice. Right now, he was on a video call with one of the Greylash members. Blip, if you can't get us those...
Something fierce.
From the pot pie?
I drank that whole water that I brought here, though. I don't usually do that.
I'm sorry. No, you did
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. You farted last night too.
When?
I thought Rocky was on your side of the bed, but he wasn't. I was like, it's okay.
When?
Well, you rolled over, woke me up, and I gave a look to make sure it wasn't my fault or something. And I laid back down, and it hurt just the slightest. Okay. That's cute.
Cute?
Yeah. That's a cute.
What
It
did
could have been worse.
What did I eat for dinner?
Popeye.
Oh. Okay. Let's take an part.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna finish up what I'm doing. I'm gonna come to bed. Getting sticky.
Maybe my finger's just fat.
Yeah, probably. Probably bloated
God.
with sugar.
What are you mean to me?
Hey, listen, we've already gone through this. If you were a little thicker, I'd be okay with it. But I know you want to be thinner. That's fine. I'm just saying, you got a gray area. You're cool. Don't worry about it. Just don't go into like zone. Tears, pat zone. Don't go there.
I'm not.
That's it. I'll not go past the pat zone either.
Did you exercise?
Huh?
Did you exercise?
I did not. Not today.
Okay.
I was tired.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just thought maybe you were warm. You wanted to get your chest rubbed.
I'm warm, so I need my chest rubbed.
Yes. It makes plenty of sense. To me, it does.
Crystals, then we have no resources to fight the families that come after us, and that includes your base. We're a big team in all this, and if your faction isn't doing its part, that means others will have to make up for it. We can't have that. If there is no improvement soon, we are going to have to drop you from the team. And if you're not on our team, it means you're on a different team. I hope you understand. The video call had ended, and Blip slammed his fist on the desk. He was always calm when dealing with things. He knew getting angry wouldn't help, but every time he saw how heartless the gray lashes were being, he couldn't help himself. Linda, come back soon, or I might say something I regret. While Quinn was away, the others decided to not do any quests until he had come back. It wasn't that they couldn't. Many of them now trusted them after such an attack, and there were always new guys they could use. But they had their things to do. With the new recruits being from Base 2, Fex was trying to get a moment when they were alone. When they were, he would use his influence skills to make them forget Paul's appearance. Paul was walking around the base hooded, but there was no doubt they would recognize him if the students saw him. As for Paul, during his time, he continued to learn the level 3 poison ability and had even purchased the 4 and 5 books to slowly increase his power. Kaz was in her apartment. It was the first time she had been away from Paul. She could trust him for a short time while not going on quests for him to not reveal himself, and with Quinn not around, she thought it was a perfect time. The perfect time to do her monthly report. She had just taken out the teleporter she had brought with her. It was square in design, and it was a special one that only vampires had access to at the moment. She pressed some dials on the front display. "Please set return code," the machine said. She entered the code, 982667. "Return code set." Pressing a few more buttons, a new message was heard. "Please input your destination code." To do this, she would have to contact the 8th leader, Jill, who who would set a code on her end with another teleporter. With the vampire teleporters, they could at any time go to each setup teleporter as long as they knew the code. The vampires had even set up a backdoor code that allowed them to travel to the Earth station, and this is what Fex had used to arrive on Earth. However, these codes would often change, making it harder for people to figure out. With the portal she was using now, the return code had been set, so when she was on the other side, all she would need to do was find a teleporter and input the return code. When she was back, she would clear the machine's code. Only in emergencies or when they knew they would not return would they destroy the teleporter. After receiving the code from Jill, she stepped in, and she was curtly in the king's throne room. Jill had already prepared everything, and seeing the king, she knelt. "You may raise your head," the king said. Compared to the last time she had seen him, he looked worse than before. His skin and pale face weren't the only problems, but it looked like he was also losing weight for the first time. No one knew how long he had, but if he didn't go into eternal slumber soon, there was a high chance that he could probably die. "Please give your report," Dwight said, one of the king's royal knights who stood by his side. Kaz went on to explain the situation on Earth. At the moment, their team was the only eyes and ears the vampires had, or at least the only ones they allowed for the moment. She told them the state of the humans, how they were at war, and what Quinn and the others had done so far, joining a faction under one of the big families. However, she didn't go into specifics, not talking about the men she had killed and why, and what actions they had to take to prevent such a thing. The simple reason was that she wasn't asked. She was asked if any of the humans had compromised them, to which she replied that they had not. If they asked if they had any problems, she would also say no because everything seemed fine to her. "And how has Paul been? Do you think he will be trouble for us?" Dwight asked. "He hasn't tried to speak to anyone. He seems a little frustrated at his situation," Kaz said. Then she started to think back to how Paul had treated her so far. In particular, she remembered Paul trying to give her lectures from time to time, mostly telling her human views. Then unexpected words came out of her mouth. "He is a good man. I believe he is truly doing this, so his people don't get hurt." It was a compliment, a first for them. The only time they would hear Kaz say nice things about people when she was talking about her leader, Bryce. "Has there been any news about our vampires that have gone missing?" She shook her head. "At this time, I haven't been able to locate or identify any of the previous agents, and I have no idea why they vanished. However, communication is limited between those factions now. It seems like many died at the start of the war. Currently, it has calmed down a little." Kaz was dismissed and free to leave, and so she stepped through the teleporter. The king and his men were wondering just what was going on. A civil war would make sense for some of their agents to die, but all of them? Until they knew or could find out why, they were hesitant to send more men, and they could only rely on Quinn and the others. When Kaz returned through the teleporter, she entered her room again, but instead of taking the teleporter down, she knelt over and entered a new code before stepping in again. This time, when she went through the teleporter, she arrived directly at the first castle where Bryce was sitting down on his throne, waiting for her. She had given the same details as she had given the king, only missing out on Paul's kind part. Hearing this, he concluded that Paul wouldn't try anything. What he didn't like, personally, was how much power Quinn was seemingly getting. Hearing about killing an Emperor-tier beast was quite an accomplishment. He was young and would soon only grow. He feared that maybe someday Quinn would use this power against the vampires. "Maybe I need more eyes down there myself. That way they can keep an eye on everyone." The king had decided not to send any more vampires, but he thought it was foolish to trust all the information coming from a team composed mostly of past humans and a new leader. The king was too cautious and too trusting, so in his place, Bryce would act for him. Bryce said, "When you return, don't reset your code." After a couple of days had passed, Quinn and the others had finally returned, and with them, they had brought back 2 new people. One of them they recognized well, seeing their happy and smiling faces and how they said nothing but positive things about Dennis. It looked like the Greylashes chose to inform no one of what had happened. Before coming back to the Crows, Quinn had made it clear to all of them, no matter what, Kaz was not to find out what he had done on the Eagle's planet, and she was not on their side. Episode 591, The Collaboration. Upon returning to the shelter, both Linda and Dennis were left to do the talking. Quinn left it up to them to try and convince Blip of their plans. They knew him best, and Quinn felt like his presence wasn't helpful at times like this. especially since most people, when looking at him, only saw him as someone young and naive. Their minds usually changed only when they saw him in action, and Blip hadn't done so. However, if he was to hear what happened from two high-ranking people whom he trusted, it was more likely he would be convinced. They were in his office and told him everything. Linda recounted only parts of what had happened to the Eagles and how they were attacked. She didn't want Dennis to relive that painful experience again. When she was done, Dennis was the one who had told him of the plan that Quinn had come up with and the resources he had to do such a thing. They both had nothing but praises for him. On top of this, Linda also had to explain Quinn's credibility about the large ship and how he had defeated the Emperor and King Tyr Beast, and how he was the Night Demon, which didn't come as a surprise due to Blip already knowing full well about it. Still, Blip was absolutely stunned after hearing everything about the Eagles, but he couldn't imagine Dennis lying to him, and the pained look on his face said it all, how true all of this was. "Those Grey Lashes, they haven't even informed us or warned us," Blip said, frustrated. "If the Sun Shields have already attacked one of the medium bases, they won't just be attacking one, they will probably come after us at some point." "That's why I think it's best if we go through this, detach ourselves from the Grey Lashes," Linda said. "Honestly, I don't know how long we can be protected by Quinn. He's just a kid at the end of the day, but if you saw how those people reacted when they saw his power, it was different. Even the Sunshield family was almost scared to act. I don't trust him 100%, but I trust him more than any of the others out there." Although Linda didn't know why the big three were scared of him, she thought it might have something to do with the vampires that she was now a part of.
Going to bed.
Maybe they secretly ran the whole thing behind the scenes, and that's why they were scared of him. Still, she had told Blip pretty much everything that had happened, but she still hadn't told him about herself. She wasn't allowed to, but even if she was, it was something she wouldn't have been able to bring herself to tell her brother just yet. "Okay," Blip said, "but there are a few things I would like to suggest. First, the others won't just accept Quinn as the leader. I would do everything as planned without telling the people. There is no need to cause a panic, but we tell the faction members to prepare themselves. When the attack happens, we will move everyone to the large ship Quinn has prepared, and we will inform them that it was due to him. They are more likely to listen to him if they feel indebted to him. This will hopefully get more people to stay as well. We won't be able to keep everyone. Second, even with this, there will still be people who won't agree with it. I suggest we form a seat of leaders. Me, Dennis, and Quinn, with each of us having an equal say in what to do. That should stop any restless crows from acting out." A smile appeared on both Dennis and Linda's faces. It didn't seem like it was too hard to convince Blip after all. That was because they were unaware of the many confrontations that he was having with the Grey Lashes behind the scenes. Now, with all this sorted, he couldn't wait for his next call. When they were no longer a part of the Grey Lashes, he could finally say what had been on his mind for the longest time. While Quinn was waiting to hear Blip's thoughts, he busied himself by introducing Alex to the whole group. He informed them that he was a forger and would be joining the team. The first person he was introduced to was Sam. "Quinn went all this way just to get a forger. He looks young. Am I missing something? He looks so ordinary." "Hey, you just thought something bad about me, didn't you?" Alex said. Sam was startled. It was true, but he just didn't know how to reply. He was staring at the floor as he was trying to come up with the words. "I've seen those big eyes before. Everyone looks at me like that, but just you wait. When I create some killer equipment for you, you'll change your mind. And you know what? I'm charging you full price," Alex said, before moving on to the next person. All Sam could do was sigh. He hated confrontation, and he couldn't fight back because it was true. "Hey, you're wearing the chest piece I created," Alex said when he came across Fex. "You were the one who made this?" Fex said with his eyes open. "I can see you and I are going to get along well. Anyone with such a good eye is cool with me," Alex said with a thumbs up. The interaction with Kaz was quite short. As usual, she put on a cute smile and proceeded to shake Alex's hand. In doing so, Alex's face went bright red, and he thought one thing: cute. "Is this the person Quinn said is extremely dangerous and will kill us if she finds out about the skill he used?" For some reason, beyond the innocent look on her face, he just couldn't see it, but he would be sure to keep his word. Finally, he was introduced to Paul, and of everyone, this was the biggest shock of all. The two of them shook hands. "It's nice to welcome you to the team," Paul said. "Yes, sir," Alex automatically responded. He felt like he was still in military school when he saw Paul. Paul shook his head. "You don't answer me now. He's your leader." It was really true, after all. It was amazing enough to learn that Quinn was the Night Demon who had beaten Duke, but to also somehow get the head general under his wing was amazing. He just couldn't imagine the events that could make that possible. Of course, Alex knew nothing about Quinn being a vampire. With the introductions done, the others asked whether or not they would be going on a quest now that he was back, but Quinn had other things he wanted to do. The attack from the Sun Shields was coming, and with Kaz on his back, there was a major problem. Quinn wouldn't be able to use his vampire powers, limiting his potential. The 10th's people were his main concern right now. He was confident that he could stand up to her, silence her, or force her to do something. But what would happen if they discovered Quinn had broken the rules? What would happen to Leo and Aaron, as well as the people? While living his life as Vincent, his body had already gone through the pain of abandoning them once, and for some reason, Vincent's duty felt like it had become his. He couldn't just leave the vampires on their own. He couldn't just break ties with the vampires just yet, until he knew what to do with them. On top of this, Quinn also wished to go back to the chamber and speak with Vincent when he had reached level 40, completing his quest. Because of all these things, he chose not to break the rules, angering the council further, perhaps even being banished from the place. At some point in time, Quinn's own goals and Vincent's goals were now in his head all along. However, this meant he wouldn't be able to beat the Sun Shields, or at least it wouldn't be an easy fight. He had the help of the others with him, but they wouldn't be able to use the full extent of their powers either, so Quinn needed something more. He would be able to use his shadow ability, but there was one more thing he had yet to finish learning. That was his soul weapon. Quinn was determined to finish learning his soul weapon before the attack.
This piece could hold another attribute if the back end could do.
Episode 592, 3 Flames. The new venture and collaboration between the Crow and the Cursed family was a success. Quinn had been informed about Blip's agreeing to his plan. He never liked working for the Grey Lashes, and he felt like, in their hands, more people would soon meet their ends anyway. He would much rather his people be in control of their destiny, but they just honestly didn't have the power to do it. Blip was just hoping that this collaboration wouldn't end up like some of the previous ones that nearly got them all wiped out in an instant. Either way, they did nothing. They would get attacked by the Sun Shields anyway. Inside Blip's office, Quinn's group, Blip, and his B ranks, including Nate, were in a meeting. It was the first meeting they would have as collaborative partners. Blip had decided to inform Megan of the plans, since she had great support within the Crows as well, and she had been with them for a long time. They had set up a table in one of the empty training rooms and told the others that they couldn't use it for now. The first part of the meeting was mentioning what happened while Linda and Quinn were away, and just who and why Dennis was involved in all of this. Quinn had yet to even tell his friends and teammates what had happened, so this had come as a sudden surprise to them as well. And that is why we will be collaborating from now on. The decision has been made, Blip said. Nate and Sam had smiles on their faces. They thought maybe they would have to get involved at some point to help Quinn with his plan of creating his own faction, but it seemed like he was doing everything himself already. Megan, I want you to inform the faction members of a possible attack. Just break it down for them slowly. I don't want anyone panicking, and I don't want this getting out to their families. If it does, we can't help it, but I trust you can figure out a way to sort this out. She nodded in response as his words strengthened her resolve. Megan didn't complain at all about the collab. This was because she knew how much pressure Paul was being put under. She blamed Mitchell's death on the Greylash family as well. Nate, since you are the best when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, I want you to start training the Crows in this. For now, quests will be limited to low-rated ones, unless a special request is made. The Sunshield family are masters of hand-to-hand combat. Even if our members use weapons, it will be good to know how to react to certain things. Sam, I want you to use that big brain of yours to come up with an effective escape plan for the others. I will give you the funds needed to purchase and set up the teleporter linking the large ship back to the Crow's place. Quinn said he will send some people to fly out with you to head back to the ship. No one had complaints about this either, as Sam had proved himself many times that he had the best brains out of everyone here for situations like this. Are there any more concerns? Blip asked. Quinn was the first to speak. I was wondering if we could use some of the Crow's funds to purchase a few things. Nate previously mentioned that there was a machine that the military used to help with learning the soul weapon. If we could get one, it would help me and the others greatly. On top of this, Alex can create beast gear for your people, better than what they currently have, but we don't have the equipment to do it.
Hello.
There were still a lot of items in Quinn's shop at the advanced level, items that gave better stats than those that were for sale in the Crow's shelter. If Alex could mass-produce these for the Crows, it would give their team that little bit of extra strength. For now, I have decided to give the Grey Lashes the minimal amount of crystals we can. 1, this will annoy them, which is a win in my book, Blip replied. And 2, we can use the rest of the crystals for ourselves. Whatever we have in storage, feel free to make use of it. However, as for your first request, purchasing teleporters in the first place is expensive. We will be using most of our funds on that. I'm afraid we won't have much to purchase the machine you're talking about. It's costly as well. Quinn wasn't too confident that without the machine, he would learn to use the soul weapon within time. These days, because he felt rushed to learn it, his mind was unfocused and he wasn't making any progress at all. Would you be able to purchase the blueprints for the machine? Alex asked. The others looked at him strangely at the table, as if he did something wrong. Did I say something strange? Alex replied. No, Linda replied. But can you really make the machine if you only have the blueprint? I thought only top-level forgers could do that. As long as I have a blueprint, I can do anything, Alex replied. Quinn was right. Alex was special, and it was worth everything to bring him over to his side. Blueprints for such things were usually very expensive. It was a forger's secret, and they would only sell it to a large group for a good price. It meant someone could then mass-produce the work as long as they had a forger skilled enough to do so. But for things such as training equipment and so on, they weren't so expensive. Everyone busily continued doing their things. After purchasing the teleporters needed, Sam had gone with Fex out into space to head back to the large ship. There they would set up the teleporter and meet back with Peter. Quinn continued to practice separating his mind and chest, but it seemed like the last hurdle was just too complicated for him. But at last, the machine had been completed by Alex after 5 days of hard work. The machine had been set up in the plane training room right at the back, and now Quinn could finally use it. Watching over him were both Nate and Sam. The machine puts your mind in a sleep-like state and allows you to see just what is in your heart, Nate started to explain. Because you can connect with your heart a little already, it means you can skip a few steps. From there, you should be able to see what is in your soul. Then all you need to do is bring yourself into the picture with your soul. Finally, it will show you what your soul weapon is or will be, an enhancement or a weapon type. In the machine, you will be able to do it easily, but you need to remember the feeling you experienced. Even if you can connect with your soul weapon in the machine, it doesn't mean you can when you are out. Everyone is different. Some people can do it straight away after making a connection, but some still take a few months. We don't have a few months, Quinn said, as he went over to the machine. The machine was an expandable chair, like the one you would use when you go to the dentist. Above the chair, there was a strange-looking helmet that would be placed on your head. Once one was seated, a few straps would come out from under the chair and tie the person in. Quinn did all this before going into the machine, and when it was activated, a few magnetic pulses could be felt on his back. He could feel them syncing with his heartbeat, going in and out. He didn't know how long he had been listening to the pulses, but soon his mind was shut off, and he could see within himself. It looks like he was in a clear white room, and in front of him he could see a strange yellow-looking flame. Is that my soul weapon? Quinn thought. It has yet to take any form or shape. The feeling from the yellow flame in the center was similar to his key, a nice warm feeling. Quinn, however, noticed something else when he got closer. He could see 2 more flames to the side of the large yellow flame. When he used his blood powers, the energy emanating from it was red. It was a flame that symbolized his vampire abilities. Then there was one purple-colored one on his left side. It twisted and moved, and Quinn had a good idea of what it was. It was his shadow ability. The soul weapon was something that developed in a person from a young age and was ready once they reached the age of 17. The shape, as well as what it could do, would be influenced by one's personality and abilities. But for Quinn, he didn't have an ability until he was 16. He had turned into a vampire and then learned of the shadow later. Was this why he could see 3 flames? Is this why he couldn't connect with his soul weapon before? When he had this thought, he suddenly saw the 3 flames moving together, and when they touched, he felt a powerful energy. The 3 flames were fusing. The flame would pulse out, a line of yellow surging through Quinn, then a line of red, and finally a line of purple. For a time,